Welcome to the Extraordinary 10 podcast, the place where the most magnificent and mind-bending facts in existence are explained to you in vivid detail.
It's great to be here. I'm really looking forward to this one.
Today, we are embarking on a massive journey. We've researched 10 extraordinary facts about the human heart. We aren't just giving you a list, we are diving deep into the science, the mystery, and the why behind these wonders.
And honestly, looking at the research we've got here, this is so much more than a biology lesson. We're getting into some pretty advanced engineering, physics, and even some surprisingly deep philosophy.
If you love exploring the unknown, don't forget to share this episode with a friend and subscribe to the channel. It's the best way to support the show and ensure you never miss a deep dive.
It really is.
All right, are you ready to see the world differently? Let's start the clock. We're officially starting the clock. You might think you know the basics of this subject, but the reality is much bigger than you imagine. Let's start with the true scale. Fact number 10.
Fact number 10, the size of two fists.
You know, when I first saw this, I almost just glossed over it. I feel like your heart is the size of your fist is one of those things they tell you in, first grade?
Right.
It feels like basic trivia. But looking at the actual medical data you pulled, that little saying isn't just a bit off. It's actually, it's pretty misleading.
It is. It's a massive oversimplification. And I mean, it gets the idea of smallness across, but it misses the real scale. And more importantly, it completely misses the mechanics. The whole one fist thing makes you picture this static lump.
Yeah.
But to really get fact 10, we need to upgrade that mental model. We should actually do a little visualization.
Oh, I like this. Okay, what are we doing?
So I want you and anyone listening, obviously not if you're driving, to actually do this. If you can, stand up or just sit up straight.
Yeah.
And imagine you're in front of a mirror.
Okay, I'm with you. Mirror visualize.
Now bring both of your hands together right in front of your chest. Press your palms together, interlace your fingers really tightly, and then cross your thumbs over the top.
Okay, hands together, fingers interlaced, thumbs crossed. It's, that's actually a pretty decent chunk of space when you look at it like this.
Exactly. Now hold that. That specific shape, that volume that your two hands are taking up right now, that is the true approximate volume of your own beating heart.
It feels really substantial. I mean, I always picture, a little Valentine shape somewhere on the left, but this feels heavy. It feels thick.
It's significant.
Yeah.
And this is where the visualization has to shift from just, geometry to actual biology.
Right.
Right now, there's just empty air between your hands.
Right.
I want you to imagine replacing that air with a living engine.
Right.
And it's not pink. It's a deep, dark crimson. It's incredibly dense. And it's slick. It's coated in a layer of something called pericardial fluid.
I saw that in the notes. Slick with pericardial fluid. That sounds less like an organ and more like, I don't know, an industrial part that's just been oiled.
That is a perfect way to think about it. The heart sits in this little sac, and that fluid is all about reducing friction. Because you have to remember, this thing is moving, and moving violently every single second. Without that fluid, it would just shred itself against your lungs.
Wow. That's a visceral image.
So keep your hands clasped. If you could, hypothetically reach into your own chest, past the sternum, through the mediastinum.
Okay, hold on. Mediastinum. That's one of those terms from the journals. What are we actually talking about here?
Think of it like the central compartment in your chest. It's sort of the box that sits right between the inflated sacs of your lungs. Prime real estate, basically. And if you reach in there and grab the organ that's the size of your hands, the texture would probably surprise you.
I've always assumed it would be soft, like cheek tissue, or maybe a firm sponge.
Not even close. That's a really common misconception. The heart is dense. It's this resilient muscle. It feels firm, almost rubbery. The sources used a fantastic analogy. Imagine gripping a water balloon.
A water balloon. But that sounds squishy.
It does, but imagine that balloon is filled with a really thick, warm gel instead of just water. And here's the kicker. Now imagine that balloon is armored.
Armored? You mean like with a shell or something?
Armored with muscle fibers.
Right.
But they aren't just layered on top of each other, they're spiraling. This is the part of the anatomy that it blows my mind. The heart isn't just a bag that squeezes. The muscle fibers are literally wound in these complex helical spirals.
Helical spirals? Like a rope?
Or spiral staircase.
Think about what you do when you have a soaking wet towel and you want to get all the water out. What's the motion?
I wring it out, I twist it.
Exactly. You twist it. That is the precise mechanical action of the heart. It doesn't just squeeze, it wrings itself out. Those spiraling muscles allow it to twist as it contracts, which maximizes what they call ejection efficiency.
So that thump-thump that we feel in our chests. That's not a squeeze, that's actually a ringing motion. It's a twisting, ringing motion, yes. And if you were actually holding that two-fist volume in your hands, you'd feel what's called the apex beat. It's this subtle but insistent tap, tap, tap against your palm as the bottom of the heart twists and actually hits the inside of your chest wall.
That is absolutely wild. It changes everything about how I picture it. It's not a balloon inflating and deflating. It's a muscle twisting itself dry 60 to 100 times every minute.
And that little tap you feel, that is the physical mechanical translation of electrical storms.
Electrical storms.
Yeah. Cascading through specialized cells, that little kick against your hand is just the physical echo of a bioelectric lightning storm that triggers the entire ringing motion.
Okay, so we've established the physical reality of Fact 10. It's two fists, it's armored, it's spiraled, it's slick, and it rings itself out. But this leads to the part of the research that I found the most counterintuitive. And this is where I need you to put on your engineering hat.
I'm right.
Why this specific size? Why two fists? If the heart's an engine, and it's our most important engine, wouldn't a bigger one be better?
It's a totally illogical assumption. I mean, in the car world, a V8 is almost always more powerful than a V6, right?
Exactly. If I could just snap my fingers and have a heart the size of, I don't know, a basketball, wouldn't that be a superpower? I'd have incredible stamina, never get tired. It feels like evolution kind of missed an opportunity.
It really does feel that way until you look at the physics. This is where biology stops and hard, cold mechanical engineering takes over. And to really understand the size, you have to look at the heart the same way a Formula One engineer looks at an engine. It's an optimization problem.
Meaning you're just balancing a bunch of trade-offs?
Everything is a trade-off. You're balancing power output against weight, heat, material stress. And there's a very specific law in physics called the Laplace relationship. And this law basically explains exactly why you do not want a basketball-sized heart.
Okay, let's break this down. The Laplace relationship. Sounds like something from a nightmare calculus class. How does that apply to my chest?
So, in the simplest terms, for a hollow thing like the heart, the law states that the tension on the wall is proportional to the pressure inside times the radius.
Okay. Tension, pressure, radius. Got it.
So let's play out your superpower idea. Let's say we double the radius of your heart. It's huge, but we need to keep the same blood pressure, right? We don't want to blow out all your arteries.
Same pressure, just a bigger pump.
Well, according to Laplace, if you double that radius, you have to double the wall tension just to maintain that same pressure.
And wall tension is what? The stress on the muscle fibers themselves.
Precisely. The muscle has to pull twice as hard just to achieve the exact same result.
Wait a minute. So it's working harder, but it's not actually doing anything better.
Yeah, exactly. And in biology, working harder always has a cost. It costs oxygen. It costs energy ATP.
So my giant basketball heart would be a complete energy hog.
It would be a catastrophic gas guzzler. To create all that extra tension, the heart would need to burn through exponentially more oxygen. It just becomes wildly inefficient.
So instead of giving myself a superpower, I've actually given myself a major handicap.
A fatal one, eventually.
Yeah.
All that extra work creates more metabolic waste, more heat, and it just accelerates the entire organ toward failure. The heart would essentially starve itself of oxygen, just trying to keep up with its own massive size.
You know, this actually explains a medical condition, right? When doctors talk about an enlarged heart, that's never good news.
It's never good news. In medicine, hypertrophy or enlargement is very often a direct precursor to heart failure. You're fighting the Laplace relationship. You're fighting physics. And physics, it always wins.
So the two fists size, that isn't random. It's the sweet spot.
It is the absolute Goldilocks zone. Evolution has tuned our cardiac dimensions to this exact volume. It's large enough to pump about 5 liters of blood every minute when we're resting, which is a lot of fluid, by the way.
5 liters a minute? That's like, what, 2.5 of those big soda bottles every 60 seconds?
Every single minute. And it can ramp up to 20, even 30 liters during heavy exercise. So it's big enough to do that, but it's small enough to avoid that Laplace penalty.
No.
It's small enough to sustain that output for 1 billion beats without catastrophic failure.
That number, 1 billion beats, we just say it, but that is staggering durability. If you bought a car part and the box said, guaranteed for 1 billion cycles, you'd assume it was a typo.
You wouldn't believe it. It's this incredible biological solution to a problem that would stump most human engineers.
Yeah.
Nature found the perfect balance between power, efficiency, and durability. And the answer to that whole equation is 2 fists.
It really makes you appreciate the design. It's not just a pump, it's a masterclass in efficiency. But And this is where it got really strange for me. The research we looked at didn't just stop at the engineering.
No, it went quite a bit deeper.
It pointed to something almost existential. We've talked about the feeling of it, the ringing, and the physics of the size. But there's a philosophical layer to Fact 10 that it really caught me off guard.
This is what we were calling the big question around the fact. It's this idea about the fragility of our own awareness.
This is the thing that kept me staring at the ceiling last night. You know, we walk around all day thinking of ourselves as these huge, complex things. I have my thoughts, my memories, my anxieties about the future. Myself. I feel permanent, but physically.
Physically, all of that beautiful complexity is riding on a very, very precarious platform. The heart, this two-fisted engine, weighs about 300 grams.
300 grams. Put that in perspective.
It's less than a can of soup. It's about the same weight as a tub of butter.
A tub of butter.
And yet, your ability to understand this conversation, your ability to love someone, to remember your childhood, to plan for tomorrow, it is 100% tethered to that 300-gram object, maintaining hydraulic pressure in your brain.
It's the ultimate mind-body problem, isn't it? Philosophers love to debate where the mind ends and the body begins. Is consciousness some kind of spirit? A ghost in the machine?
It's a great debate. But physiology gives us a very brutal, very visceral answer. There might be a ghost in the machine, but that ghost is anchored. It is strictly contingent on the machine working.
So if that 300-gram muscle stops its ringing motion?
The ghost just vanishes.
Yeah.
Instantly, the screen goes black. Every complex thought, every dream, every piece of art you've ever loved, it all depends on that rhythm just continuing, beat after beat after beat.
That makes you feel incredibly vulnerable.
It does. It highlights how profoundly physical our existence is. We aren't, clouds of data or spirits floating in some void. We are biological machines, and we depend entirely on a pump the size of our own clasped hands.
It completely changes how you look at a crowd of people. You walk through a busy city, you see hundreds of faces. Normally, I just see people. But after reading this research,
How do you see now?
I just see hundreds of these little engines, billions of them globally. All of them beating, all of them fighting the Laplace relationship, all of them just keeping the lights on for humanity.
It's an incredibly humbling perspective. We're fragile, we're optimized, and we're unbelievably resilient all at the same time.
The research did add one little caveat, though. We're talking about biology as it is now, but the notes hinted this might just be a specific epoch of human history.
That's true. Right now, we are living in the epoch of biological humans. We're defined by these physical limitations, by the size of our heart, by our need for oxygen.
But technology is moving so fast.
Incredibly fast, and future technologies might change this entire equation. We're already seeing the very early days of total artificial heart pumps that don't need to look like fists or follow biological rules at all.
Like a continuous flow pump or something.
Exactly. Turbines. Magnetic levitation. If we replace the biological heart with a synthetic one, the Laplace relationship suddenly becomes irrelevant. You could have a heart the size of a walnut or a suitcase, depending on the power source.
Or if we get really into the science fiction, uploading consciousness to something that doesn't need a pump at all.
In which case, the fragility of awareness we just talked about, it just disappears. But that is definitely a deep dive for another day.
Right, for now.
Yes.
We're stuck with the two fists.
For now, on this little planet, everything that we are, our civilizations, our art, even this conversation, it all rides in the back of the two-fisted engine.
It's a terrifying and, I guess, a beautiful thought to hold on to. A 300-gram ringing machine that defines our entire reality.
It really does put everything in perspective. Fact 10 isn't just a measurement, it's a profound reality check.
That was Fact 10. Stay tuned. Fact 9 is coming up next.
Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 9.
Number 9. Okay, we are getting into the heavy hitters now. This is one of those facts that sits right at the intersection of biology, industrial engineering, and, frankly, a little bit of existential philosophy.
It really is. Today we're looking at something the source material calls the lifetime pumping record. And I have to be honest with you, and with everyone listening, when I first looked at the research notes for this deep dive, I actually, I stopped and double-checked the data. I thought there had to be a typo.
It does look like a misprint, doesn't it? When you just see it written down on the page, the numbers don't seem to correlate with what we, what we think we know about biology.
Completely. We're conditioned to think of our hearts in these I don't know, romantic or poetic terms. It's the seat of emotion, the thing that flutters, or maybe just that thumping in our chest that complains when we run for the bus.
Right, but we rarely stop to think about the sheer industrial scale of what that little organ is actually doing, strictly as a pump.
Exactly. And I think that's really the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah, let's strip away the romance for a few minutes. Move away from the poetic and look at the mechanical reality. We want to visualize the volume, because when you actually run the numbers on what the human heart moves over a lifetime, it creates a picture that seems, well, frankly, physically impossible.
It sounds like a magic trick or like a violation of physics or something. How can a small organ move an industrial amount of liquid? So let's unpack this. We need to get a visual in our heads to really understand the scale here.
Right. To get a handle on this, we need to leave the anatomy lab completely. I want you to mentally transport yourself to a major commercial harbor. Picture yourself standing on the deck of an oil supertanker.
Okay, I'm there. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we are not talking about a little fishing boat.
Yeah. No, not at all. We are talking about a true colossus. These are the ultra-large crude carriers, vessels that dwarf entire city blocks. If you're standing on the deck, looking from the bow to the stern, that's so massive that if you were to walk it at a brisk pace, you're looking at a 15-minute hike.
That's a huge amount of steel.
Yeah.
You're basically standing on a floating skyscraper laid on its side. I can imagine the wind, salt spray looking down, and water is just way, way down there.
It is a floating city of cargo. Now, the mental exercise is this. I want you to imagine filling every single hold, every tank, every compartment of that massive ship with blood.
Okay, that's a visceral image. A ship the size of a city block filled to the brim. It's almost a horror movie image, but I have it. I'm picturing the sheer weight of it.
Now here's the twist. If you think that one supertanker represents the amount of blood your heart pumps in a lifetime, you are drastically underestimating it.
Wait, one supertanker isn't enough. I was assuming that was the punchline, that we fill one of them and that's the record.
Not even close. If you filled just one, you'd be stopping way too early. You need to imagine a small fleet of these industrial-scale containers lined up in a harbor, all filled to capacity.
That is absolutely wild. A fleet of supertankers. From one heart.
That's the reality. When you crunch the numbers, assuming an average heart rate, average stroke volume, and an average lifespan, the total volume comes out to approximately 1 million barrels of blood pumped over a lifetime.
1 million barrels. I'm trying to wrap my head around that number. It's almost too big to really conceptualize. 1 million.
It is hard to grasp. If the ship analogy isn't doing it for you, try this. Imagine Olympic swimming pools. We all know how big those are.
Okay, yeah, I can picture that. 50 meters long, tons of water, the kind of pool where you get tired just swimming a few laps.
Exactly. So if you could somehow collect every drop of blood your heart ever pumped, which, thankfully we don't, but if you did, and you started filling those pools, you wouldn't just fill one or two.
We would fill hundreds of them.
Hundreds. Enough to stretch across multiple city blocks. Imagine walking past pool after pool after pool for like a mile, all filled by the work of one muscle.
It's the one muscle part that really gets me. If we were talking about a massive industrial pump the size of a house, bolted to a concrete floor, powered by a diesel generator, I'd say, sure, that makes sense. But we're talking about something the size of my fist.
And that is the fascinating constraint. That's what makes this an engineering marvel, not just a statistic. Every single molecule of that ocean-sized volume, that million barrels, that fleet of supertankers, has to pass through chambers that are literally the size of your clasped fists.
It feels like a bottleneck that just shouldn't work. I mean, the pressure must be immense.
It works because the system is incredibly dynamic. It doesn't just trickle through. That blood is accelerated. We're talking about flow speeds approaching 1 meter per second in the main arteries.
1 meter per second. That's significant velocity inside your own body.
It has to be. Think about the resistance. It's being routed through a network of vessels that is just mind-bogglingly complex. We aren't just pumping into an open tank. We are pumping through a mesh. If you took all the vessels, arteries, veins, capillaries, and laid them end to end, they would circle the Earth more than twice.
So let's just recap this visual because this is heavy. We have a pump the size of a fist. It's pushing a fleet of supertankers worth of fluid, and it's pushing it through a pipe network that is narrow, high resistance, and long enough to wrap around the planet twice.
Precisely. It is a logistical feat that dwarfs almost anything we've built in the human world. It is high pressure, high volume, and continuous operation.
And speaking of things we've built, the source material makes a really interesting comparison here to help us understand the power involved. It brings up the Hoover Dam.
Yes, I loved this part of the reading. The Hoover Dam is a great benchmark because it's basically the gold standard for moving massive amounts of fluid. When we think hydroelectric, that's the image that pops into your head, a concrete colossus.
Right, so looking at the notes here, the Hoover Dam transforms the kinetic energy of the Colorado River. It moves about 11,000 cubic feet of water per second.
Which is a volume of water that is hard to even picture. It's just a wall of water.
And the dam itself weighs 6.6 million tons.
So you have a 6.6 million ton structure moving a river. That makes intuitive sense to us. Big job, big machine. You need mass to move mass.
Exactly. But here is where it gets really interesting. When you look at the human heart relative to its body size,
it performs an astonishingly parallel feat. This is the contrast that blows my mind. The Hoover Dam weighs millions of tons. Your heart weighs about 300 grams.
300 grams. That's a heavy orange.
Or a can of soup.
Maybe a large apple, yeah. And yet that 300-gram engine processes your entire blood volume, which is about 5 liters roughly once every single minute.
Every minute for decades.
It never gets a break.
Yeah.
I mean, the dam probably has downtime, right? Or at least low flow periods where they inspect the turbines. Yeah. Oh, for sure. The dam absolutely has maintenance crews. They can divert water, they can shut down a turbine.
But the energy calculation is what really puts this into perspective.
Yeah.
The source mentions a calculation regarding the work output that I think is just brilliant.
Oh, I love this part. Lay it on us.
Okay, so in physics, work is force times distance. If you take the cumulative mechanical work performed by the heart over a lifetime, just the raw physics of moving that fluid against all that resistance, and you converted that into potential energy.
Okay, so if we turn that pumping energy into lifting energy,
it would be enough energy to theoretically lift you, the listener, sitting there right now, to the altitude of Mount Everest.
Oh, once?
No. Not once, hundreds of times over.
That is unbelievable. My heart generates enough energy to carry me up Everest hundreds of times.
That is the power density we are talking about. If you were a machine, you would be incredibly efficient. It's a biological engine that, pound for pound, rivals or exceeds our greatest engineering achievements. But the difference, as you hinted at, is the maintenance.
Right. The Hoover Dam is a marvel, but it requires teams of engineers, constant upkeep, billion-dollar infrastructure. If a turbine cracks, they shut it down, drain the bay, and replace it with a crane.
Exactly. But your heart performs this work autonomously. There is no engineering team going in there every Tuesday to tighten the valves. It self-repairs minor damage. It adjusts its output in real time. You start running, it pumps harder immediately. You sleep, it slows down.
And it does all of this without being plugged into the grid.
That's the kicker. The Hoover Dam relies on the flow of a massive river gravity doing the heavy lifting. Your heart does this Everest lifting work while consuming only chemical energy extracted from the food you eat. A sandwich and some oxygen, and it keeps pumping a supertanker's worth of fluid.
It really puts the machine aspect of the body into a new light. It's not just a pump, it's a smart, self-healing, high-efficiency pump that runs on snacks.
It is the ultimate independent engine, but, and this is where the sources take a bit of a turn, there's a flip side to this incredible volume.
Yeah, this is the big question section of our deep dive. We've been talking about these huge numbers, million barrels, hundreds of Everest with a lot of awe. But looking at it that way forces us to confront something a bit uncomfortable.
It shifts our perspective on time. We usually measure a life in years or milestones or memories. I was married in 2015, or I graduated in 2005. But when you look at the lifetime pumping record, you start measuring a life in barrels of blood.
It sounds colder, doesn't it? Like checking the odometer on a car.
It's not necessarily cold, but it is strictly mechanical. It reveals that we are biological machines operating on finite mechanical budgets.
A finite budget, that's a heavy concept.
It is. Think of it like a bank account. It's a vast account. Huge, really, but it is limited. Every heartbeat is a withdrawal. Every barrel pumped is a deduction from the total asset.
So every time my heart beats, that's one less beat I have in the account.
In a mechanical sense, yes. The heart is resilient, but no mechanical system runs forever. Components wear out, valves stiffen, muscle fibers degrade. It's simply the nature of materials.
But we are living longer than ever. I mean, medical science has done a pretty good job of extending that budget.
Absolutely. A person born today can expect their heart to pump for 9 or maybe even 10 decades. That's a massive extension compared to our ancestors, who might have only gotten 4 or 5 decades out of the pump. We've learned to manage the budget better, to repair the pump when it falters.
With bypasses and stents and so on?
Right. But the fundamental constraint remains. The tank eventually runs dry or the pump eventually stops. And this raises a really profound question about the future, which the source touches on.
We are getting better at replacing parts. We have artificial valves. We're working on total artificial hearts.
Exactly. So if the heart is just a pump, a really efficient, complex pump, can't we just swap it out, like replacing the alternator in a car?
That's the question the source poses. If we replace the biological heart with a mechanical or bioengineered alternative that doesn't wear out something made of titanium and polymers, they can run for 1,000 years. Have we solved mortality?
Or have we just kicked the can down the road? Because the heart isn't the only thing wearing out.
Right. Have we merely postponed a different kind of failure? Because the heart isn't working in isolation. It's servicing the brain. It's servicing the tissues. It's the logistics hub for the whole operation.
And that connects back to consciousness. The source made a really interesting point about how this pumping record isn't just a statistic. It's actually the foundation of who we are.
You mean it's the substrate of you?
That's what is so fascinating here. We like to think of our minds as these floaty, ethereal things, our memories, our identity, our self. We feel like we exist separate from our bodies.
But you can't have the self without the flow.
Precisely. That million-barrel record serves one purpose: to keep oxygen and glucose hitting your neurons. Consciousness, memory, identity, they're all sustained by physical processes. And physical processes are subject to thermodynamic limits.
Thermodynamic limits. That sounds like a polite way of saying physics always wins in the end. Can you break that down for us?
Physics does always win. Thermodynamics tells us that order requires energy. Keeping your body organized, keeping your memories intact, keeping your heart beating in a rhythm that is highly ordered. The universe, generally speaking, tends toward disorder or entropy.
So the heart is basically fighting a constant war against the universe's desire to make us messy.
That's a great way to put it. The heart fighting gravity to lift blood to your brain, the resistance of the vessels, the energy conversion. It's all a battle against entropy. It is a battle to maintain structure, and that costs energy.
So understanding these limits, understanding that we are moving a fleet of supertankers through a fist-sized pump to fight off entropy, what does that do for us? Is it just depressing?
I don't think so. I think it's the first step toward two things. One, potentially transcending those limits with technology. If we understand the mechanical budget, maybe we can hack it. Maybe we can extend the warranty.
And the second?
Accepting them with grace. There is something profoundly humbling about realizing that your entire experience of the world, every sunset you've seen, every conversation you've had, was bought and paid for by a 300-gram muscle doing the work of a hydroelectric dam, beat by beat, barrel by barrel.
It really makes you appreciate the resilience of the system. We walk around worrying about our emails or traffic. Meanwhile, there is this heroic feat of engineering happening in our chest, completely autonomously keeping the lights on.
It is the silent hero of the human experience. It asks for nothing but fuel and oxygen, and in return, it gives us the energy to climb mountains, literally and metaphorically.
A lot of work for 300 grams. It kind of makes you want to treat it a little better.
It's the hardest working 300 grams in the known universe, as far as I'm concerned. And yes, knowing the workload it's under does make that extra slice of pizza look a little different. You realize you're fueling a high-performance engine.
I think I'm going to look at a supertanker a little differently next time I see a picture of one. I won't just see a ship. I'll see a visual representation of my own life force.
Just remember, you've got a whole fleet of them inside you, flowing through time.
Incredible stuff. It really redefines what it means to have a big heart. It's not about emotion, it's about volume.
It's about the barrels.
That covers 9 a ton. Ready for the next one? Let's head to Fact 8. Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 8.
The 100,000 beat day.
You know, I have to be honest, when I first saw that number 100,000, my first instinct was to grab my calculator.
Right.
It feels like one of those numbers that gets, rounded up for dramatic effect. Like when people say, I've told you 1,000,000 times. But this is a literal hard count.
It's a literal non-negotiable count.
Right.
And that's just the average baseline. I mean, if you're stressed or exercising, that number climbs a lot higher.
Wow.
But even if you spent the entire day just lying perfectly still, your heart would still perform this mechanical reset about 100,000 times before morning.
It's the consistency that gets me. I can't get my coffee order right 100 times in a row, let alone 100,000. But this machine just does it. Running, sleeping, whatever.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive. It's easy to see the number and just go, wow, that's a lot. But we want to move past the statistic. We really need to look at the mechanical and, honestly, the philosophical implications of hosting a machine that has to basically explode and reset itself that many times just to keep you here.
You said explode, which is a little unsettling for something happening in my chest.
Yeah, fair enough.
So before we get into the heavy philosophy, let's just ground this for a second. I want to do a quick sensory check. If you're listening and, not operating heavy machinery, just close your eyes for a moment. Focus on your chest.
You're trying to feel for that subtle rhythmic pressure, the little push of the rib cage against the lung.
Okay, yeah, I've got it. It's a thump, a little nudge. It almost feels polite, like a simple muscle twitch.
And see, that's the deception right there. That polite little thump is actually a miniature, almost violent event. If you could shrink down and stand inside the ventricle, it wouldn't feel like a twitch.
What would it feel like?
It would feel like a choreographed explosion.
Okay, walk me through that choreography. Because from out here, it just feels like a squeeze.
It starts with electricity, but not just a spark. It's a wave of depolarization.
Hold on, you're dropping $5 words on me already. Depolarization.
Fair point. Think of it like a domino effect of electrical charge. It races along these specialized fibers at nearly 4 meters per second.
Which is much faster than I can sprint.
Oh, significantly faster. And it has to be. If that signal moved slowly, the muscle fibers would contract one by one. It'd be sort of a wobble.
Not pump.
Not a pump. You need them all to contract instantly in perfect unison. That electrical wave hits, and that triggers the release of calcium ions.
Calcium. I always just think of bones.
In the heart, calcium is the ignition key. It floods the cellular chambers and it unlocks these molecular motors. Tiny protein structures that grab onto each other and just heave.
And that's the physical motion.
That's the heave. And at the same time, you have these valves. They're essentially biological doors slamming shut to prevent backflow.
Is that the sound? The lug dub?
That is the sound of doors slamming shut. And they have to slam. The pressure inside your heart during a beat is just immense. The source material describes the movement of the ventricles as wringing themselves dry.
Like a wet towel.
Exactly. Imagine wringing out a thick, wet towel. It's a twisting, torque-heavy motion.
So every time I feel that little tap, my heart is actually twisting itself like a wet towel.
100,000 times a day.
Okay, see, that's where the mechanics just start to sound impossible. If I took a towel and wrung it out 100,000 times in a day, the towel would shred. My hands would fall off. How does this thing not just disintegrate?
And that brings us to the inevitable comparison.
A Swiss watch.
The Swiss watch, the gold standard of engineering metaphors.
Right.
You picture a beautiful Patek Philippe. Hundreds of tiny gears, jeweled bearings, springs, absolute precision. And we like to think the heart is like that.
But I guess you're about to tell me the watch is, well, garbage by comparison.
Not garbage, but it is fragile. A watch is designed to exist in a safe, clean environment. It sits in a case, it's kept dry, kept at a moderate temperature.
I'm the heart.
The heart operates in a warm, corrosive, high-pressure environment filled with aggressive chemicals.
I have never heard my own body described as corrosive before.
I mean, it's salt water, enzymes, reactive elements. If you dropped a Swiss watch gear into a living ventricle, it wouldn't last a day, it would corrode or jam.
Okay.
But the bigger difference is maintenance. A fine watch ticks for decades, sure, but eventually a spring fatigues, a gear wears down. What happens then?
You take it to a guy with a tiny screwdriver, he stops it, and he replaces the part.
You stop the watch. That is the key. You have to stop it to fix it. The heart never gets to stop. It has to repair its own worn-out proteins, replace its own cellular engines, fix its own leaks, all while running at full capacity.
That's like rebuilding a 747 engine while you're flying over the Atlantic.
And not just maintaining speed, but constantly adjusting it. A watch just marks time. It ticks at a set rate. Your heart generates time based on demand.
Generates time. That sounds a bit metaphysical for a biology talk. What do you mean by that?
Well, think about what time is to a cell in your brain. It's not seconds or minutes. A neuron doesn't care about the clock on a wall.
It cares about getting oxygen and glucose.
Exactly, and getting rid of waste. Biological time is the tempo of metabolism. It's that oscillating pressure gradient pushing resources out to the very edges of your body. If that rhythm slows down too much,
Biological time slows down.
and if it stops,
Time's up.
the boundary is just terrifyingly sharp. The source notes that if you miss just a few beats, consciousness fades. Instantly, you pass out. If the machine stops for 4 minutes, just 4 irreversible brain damage begins.
4 minutes, that's the entire buffer we have.
That is the buffer. The 100,000 beat day isn't just a count. It's a constant, high-stakes negotiation with entropy. Each one of those beats is described as existentially critical.
It makes you realize how fragile the whole system is.
Yeah.
You know, we walk around feeling like these solid, permanent things. I am here, but we're really just sort of surfing on top of this rhythm.
And that fragility leads to, I think, the most fascinating part of the research. It starts to question the very idea of you.
The identity question.
Right. We all have this assumption of continuity. I'm the same person I was 5 minutes ago. I'm a solid object moving through time. But the physiology suggests that you are not an object at all.
What am I then?
You're a process.
Explain that.
Okay, let's go back to the beat. We talked about the contraction, the explosion, but what happens between the beats?
The rest period. The silence.
It's a gap. For a fraction of a second, the chambers are filling, pressure is equalizing, and this is the critical part, no blood is moving forward.
Wait. So the flow actually stops.
Briefly,
Yeah.
yes. The system pauses to reload. So the provocative question the source asks is, in that instant of stillness, where are you?
That feels like a bit of a stretch, doesn't it? I mean, just because my blood pauses for a millisecond doesn't mean I disappear. My
Yeah.
brain's still firing. My memories are still there.
Are they? Or is the potential for them there? The brain requires that constant pressure to function. In that tiny gap, you're essentially existing on momentum. You're coasting.
So you're saying we're not a continuous line, we're a frequency.
We're a series of 100,000 frames per day. It's like a movie projector. It looked like a smooth moving picture, but if you slow it down, it's just image black, image black.
That is the analogy?
And over the course of the day, it gets even more complex. This is the ship of Theseus problem.
Now, the paradox. Remind me.
Right. If you have a ship and you replace one wooden plank, it's the same ship.
Yeah, sure.
But what if you replace every single plank one by one over years until no original wood is left? Is it still the ship of Theseus?
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
The heart is doing this to itself. Constantly.
It is. Over those 100,000 beats, cells are damaged and repaired. Proteins are built and broken down. The actual physical material that makes up your heart right now is not the exact same material you woke up with this morning.
So identity isn't a fixed thing, it's a dynamic process. I'm not the candle, I'm the flame.
That's a beautiful way to put it. The flame looks the same, it holds its shape, but the fuel and the atoms inside it are constantly racing through and vanishing. The 100,000 beat day is the rhythm that keeps that flame lit.
But this isn't just philosophy anymore. This is where the deep dive gets a little bit sci-fi.
Yeah.
Because we are starting to replace the candle.
The age of the synthetic oscillator. We have the technology now, and have for a while, to replace the biological heart with machine.
Total artificial hearts.
Yes, and VAD's ventricular assist devices. But here's the detail that really keeps me up at night. Some of the most advanced mechanical pumps, they don't beat.
What do you mean they don't beat?
There are continuous flow pumps, turbines. They just spin at thousands of RPMs and push the blood in a steady, relentless stream.
No lub-dub.
No lub-dub, no pressure spike, no diastolic pause. If you put your head on the chest of someone with one of these devices, you don't hear a heartbeat. You hear a hum, like a refrigerator or a computer fan.
That is incredibly unsettling. But
Yeah.
does it matter? I mean, as long as the brain gets oxygen, who cares if it comes in a pulse or a steady stream?
Well, that is the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Does the self change when you switch from a rhythm to a hum?
I feel like I want to push back on that. Blood is blood. Oxygen is oxygen. Why would the delivery method change who I am?
Because your entire nervous system evolved over millions of years in a feedback loop with that rhythm.
Yeah.
We know the heart sends signals back to the brain. It modulates how we process fear, how we perceive intuition. It's called interoception.
Right, so if I'm stressed, my heart races, and my brain feels that and panics even more.
Correct. Now imagine you sever that connection. You replace the responsive, dance, organic rhythm with a flat mechanical line. There have been reports, anecdotal, sure, but persistent, of people with these devices feeling different.
Detached.
Detach how? A sense of emotional flatness, a difficulty in connecting to that visceral feeling of being alive. The source material asks, is there something essential about the organic 100,000 beat day that a synthetic machine just can't replicate?
It's the difference between a real drummer playing a groove and a drum machine. One has life, the other just has output.
And that's the continuous flow problem. If consciousness is a series of frames, like we said with the movie projector, what happens when you just turn on a high beam flashlight, when there are no more gaps?
You lose the texture of time.
You might. We are preserving the plumbing, absolutely. We are keeping the CEO upstairs alive. But are we preserving the human experience?
It sounds like we are entering a phase where medicine is going to have to start hiring a lot more philosophers.
I think we absolutely are. As we push the boundaries of what it means to live, we're stripping away some of these biological limits. But those limits, that frailty, that rhythm, that need to rest between beats, that might be part of what makes us human in the first place.
It really makes you look at that number 100,000 with a completely different level of respect. It's not just a statistic. It is a daily marathon.
It's an endurance feat that is completely unmatched in nature.
And it's happening right now, as we're talking, as you're listening to this.
Yeah.
The valves are slanting, the towel's being wrung out, the flame is being fed.
100,000 little affirmations of existence every single day.
I think I'm going to spend the rest of the day trying not to think about my own heartbeat, because now I'm just hyper aware of it. But, you know, it is nice to know that down in the engine room, the crew is working that hard.
It deserves a standing ovation, even if it happens in total silence.
That covers 8. Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 7. Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 7.
You know, this is one of those facts that when you first hear it, it just sounds completely made up.
It really does.
We spend so much time talking about the heart, the pump, the engine, the beat itself. But fact number 7 isn't about the engine.
No.
It's about the road network.
The infrastructure.
Yeah.
And the scale of this infrastructure is, I mean, it's honestly terrifying. I've read the sources 3 times now, and I still have trouble visualizing it. The fact is this. If you took the human vascular system, all the veins, arteries, capillaries, and you unspooled them into a single line, the total length is 60,000 miles.
60,000 miles, all packed inside a single human body.
And just to give you a sense of scale here, the circumference of the entire Earth is what, about 24,900 miles?
Around that, yeah.
So we aren't just talking about wrapping around the world once. We are talking about wrapping around the equator twice, with enough leftover track to, I don't know, make a detour to Australia.
It's a paradox, isn't it? I mean, you look at your own wrist, you see a couple of blue veins under the skin, and it looks so manageable. It looks like a simple loop.
Right.
But the density of the system is just incredibly deceptive. The vast majority of that mileage isn't in the big highways you can see, it's in all the tiny back roads.
And that's really the mission for this deep dive.
Yeah.
We need to explain how 60,000 miles of tubing fits inside a person, why nature built it that way, and this is the part that really got me. What happens to our actual identity when those miles of road start to crumble?
It's a journey, really. From anatomy to engineering, and then, eventually to philosophy. And to understand the why, you really have to understand the how.
You have to get inside.
You have to get inside the system.
The sources suggest a visualization for this that I think is, well, it's perfect. So I want you to imagine you're shrinking down, way, way down. You're becoming microscopic. You are now a single red blood cell.
A little biconcave disc, about 8 micrometers across. You're basically this tiny, flexible raft that's designed to do one thing: carry oxygen.
Okay, so we're starting this right at the very beginning. You're floating inside the left ventricle of the heart.
This is the high-pressure zone, the engine room. And if you're that blood cell, you're just drifting in this warm soup of plasma, surrounded by millions of others. It's crowded, but for just a split second, it's calm.
And then the walls slam shut.
The contraction. The sources call it a crushing force, and that is not hyperbole. The walls of that ventricle contract with just enough violence to overcome the pressure of the entire arterial system.
So you aren't gently ushered out, you are fired.
You are absolutely fired. The aortic valve blows open like a trap door, and you are launched into the ascending aorta.
Let's talk about the speed here. The notes say you're moving at nearly 1 meter per second. Now that doesn't sound fast for, say, a car, but for a microscopic cell inside a closed tube.
It's a sprint. It is turbulent. It's chaotic rushing. And you have to remember, the aorta isn't some rigid PVC pipe. It's living tissue. It's elastic. So when that wave of blood hits the aortic wall, the wall actually expands to catch the pressure, and then it snaps back to propel you forward. You're basically surfing a pressure wave.
The pressure wave. So we're racing down this main superhighway. The aorta is wide about like a garden hose, you said.
That's a good comparison.
But we can't stay on the highway forever. The whole point is delivery.
Right. This is where that 60,000-mile figure starts to make sense. You have to get off the interstate, so the aorta branches into major arteries, like the carotids heading up to the brain or the subclavians to the arms.
And then those branch again. And again, it's just a constant splitting.
We call it the arterial tree. You go from arteries to smaller arterioles, the road gets narrower, the turbulence starts to die down, the speed drops. You're moving from a rushing river into a quiet stream.
Until you hit the final destination, the capillaries. This part of the visualization felt really claustrophobic to me.
It is intimate. I mean, you've gone from a tube that's 3 centimeters wide to a tube that's microscopic. So narrow, in fact, that you, as a red blood cell, cannot fit through side by side with another one.
You have to get in single file.
You actually have to fold yourself a little bit. You are scraping against the walls, and this friction is absolutely critical.
Why?
Because the capillary walls, they're made of these endothelial cells that are just gossamer thin. And because you're pressed right up against them, the distance between you and the tissue outside is almost nothing.
And that's the drop-off point.
That is the magic moment. The oxygen molecules, they just detach from you, ghost right through that thin wall, and feed the muscle or the organ tissue on the other side.
You literally change color here, don't you?
Yeah.
You go from that bright arterial red
to a darker maroon, yeah, as you offload the cargo. Correct.
Wow.
And then the squeezing is over. The vessels start to merge again. The capillaries feed into venules, which feed into veins. The road widens, and you just sort of drift back toward the heart to do it all over again.
And the craziest part of all of this, that entire loop heart takes about 60 seconds.
1 minute.
It's a marvel of efficiency.
Yeah.
But this brings us to the big engineering question. Why the complexity? Why do we need 60,000 miles of these tiny claustrophobic back roads? Why didn't nature just build a system with fewer, bigger pipes?
Well, it seems like it would be easier, doesn't it? Just pump blood through some big open tubes, less friction, less work.
Exactly. I mean, if I'm watering my garden, I use a big hose, not a million coffee stirrers taped together.
But that intuition fails because of the goal. The goal isn't just to move the blood. The goal is to deliver the payload. And diffusion, that process of oxygen moving from the blood to the cell, only works over incredibly tiny distances.
So if you had big pipes, the cells in the middle of a tissue would be too far away from the blood. They'd starve.
Precisely. You have to get the blood within micrometers of every single cell in your body, and that requires a massive surface area. But you also have to deal with the physics of flow, and this is where we have to talk about Poiseuille's law.
Okay, I was hoping we could avoid the heavy math, but the sources really lean into this. It's about resistance, isn't it?
It is, and it's a rule that governs basically everything, from the plumbing in your house to massive oil pipelines. Poiseuille's law states that the resistance to fluid flow isn't just related to the size of the pipe, it's related to the radius to the fourth power.
To the fourth power.
Wow.
So a tiny, tiny change in the size of the pipe.
It's a huge change in difficulty. If you cut the radius of a tube in half, it doesn't become twice as hard to push fluid through. It becomes 16 times harder.
16. So pushing blood through those tiny little capillaries is exponentially more difficult than pushing it through the aorta.
It is the difference between driving a truck down an empty freeway and trying to drive that same truck through a crowded hallway. If the whole system were small tubes, the heart would need to be the size of a car to generate enough pressure.
So nature had to compromise.
It's an optimization problem. And the solution is what we call a fractal network. You use a few big, low-resistance pipes for the long-distance travel to save energy, but for that last mile, you split into millions of tiny, high-resistance vessels to ensure every cell gets a delivery.
And that structure, the fractal branching, is why we see the same patterns everywhere in nature.
It is universal. You look at a river, Delta One, big river splits into smaller channels to irrigate the land.
A lightning bolt.
A lightning bolt, yeah. It branches to find the path of least resistance. Look at the root system of a tree.
The tree analogy was one that really clicked for me. A tree is basically Our vascular system turned inside out.
Exactly. The roots branch out to extract nutrients from the soil. Our blood vessels branch out to deliver nutrients to the soil of our tissues. It's the same geometry solving the same problem of distribution.
So we have this 60,000-mile miracle. It's mathematically perfect, it's efficient, but,
Yeah.
and this is where the deep dive takes a turn,
Yeah.
it's also incredibly vulnerable.
It is infrastructure. And the thing about infrastructure, whether it's roads or bridges or blood vessels, is that it degrades over time.
We usually talk about heart disease, but the sources really frame it as vascular disease. It's not just the pump failing, it's the pipes getting clogged.
Think about that 60,000-mile highway again. Over time, debris accumulates. We call it plaque. The walls get stiffer, they lose that elasticity we talked about in the aorta, the road narrows.
And because of Poiseuille's law, even a tiny narrowing means a huge drop in flow.
Exactly. A small buildup of plaque doesn't just slow things down a little, it creates a massive bottleneck. And this brings us to the most provocative part of the research, the connection between this plumbing and our actual identity.
The identity paradox.
Right. Because when we talk about who we are, ourself, we tend to think of it as something spiritual, or at least strictly neurological. My memories, my personality, my wit. That's me.
The brain is just another organ on the delivery route.
And it is a greedy one. The brain consumes about 20% of the body's total oxygen and glucose. It relies entirely on that delivery network. So what happens when that network starts to degrade? When the capillaries in the brain get clogged or stiffened?
The supply chain breaks down.
And when the supply chain breaks, the factory stops working correctly. We see it as aging. We say, oh, grandpa's just getting a little forgetful, or I'm not as sharp as I used to be. But physiologically, what's often happening is microvascular restriction.
That is just terrifying. It implies that my patience, my ability to appreciate a joke, my memory of my childhood, all of that is contingent on hydraulic pressure.
It forces us to ask, are you still you if the infrastructure sustaining your neural activity degrades? If your personality shifts because of low oxygen flow, is that a change in your character, or is it just a plumbing issue?
The source phrased it as, the software of the mind is held hostage by the hardware of the vessels.
That is the stark reality.
Yeah.
We are our plumbing. The integrity of your consciousness is directly tied to the integrity of those 60,000 miles.
But, and here is the silver lining, if it is an engineering problem,
Then there might be an engineering solution, exactly. If you view aging not as some mystical biological clock, but as accumulated damage to a network, you can, in theory, fix the network.
the sources dive into the future of this, specifically nanotechnology.
This is the frontier. Right now, our tools for vascular disease are so blunt stents, bypass surgery, blood thinners. But imagine a different approach. Imagine introducing synthetic cells into the bloodstream.
Microscopic road crews.
Tiny, autonomous machines, nanobots, and their entire job would be to patrol that 60,000-mile highway.
They could just swim through the system, find plaque, and scrub it off.
Scrub it off, repair the endothelial lining, target inflammation. They could essentially keep the pipes in factory new condition indefinitely.
Indefinitely is a very heavy word, because if you keep the pipes clear,
If you maintain the delivery system perfectly, you remove the primary driver of decay. Organ failure usually happens because the blood supply is compromised. If the supply never stops, the organs don't starve.
so we're really talking about a form of immortality, or at the very least, radically extended life.
But this brings us right back to philosophy. If we do that, have we solved death, or have we just changed what it means to be human?
It's the ship of Theseus problem all over again.
It is. If you replace every plank of a ship over time, is it the same ship? If you are being kept alive not by your own biological resilience, but by a swarm of millions of nanobots constantly repairing you, are you still a biological human?
It's the difference between living and being maintained.
Right. Living implies a cycle. Growth, peak, decline. Maintenance implies a kind of static state. A car can run forever if you keep replacing the parts, but a car isn't alive. If we turn our bodies into things that are just maintained, do we lose something fundamental about the human experience?
And there's another layer to that, which the notes touched on, the rhythm.
Like pulse.
Our entire lives are set to the beat of the heart. It's the first sound we hear in the womb. It's how we measure fear or love or exertion. But if we move to advanced vascular maintenance or even continuous flow artificial hearts,
We might lose the beat. There are already artificial heart pumps that don't beat. They just push a steady, continuous stream of blood. Patients who have these devices don't have a pulse.
imagine that. Walking around, talking, thinking, but with zero pulse. a steady hum inside you instead of a heartbeat.
Does that change how you feel emotion? Does it change how you experience time? We don't know the answer yet, but it suggests that our humanity might be more tied to these physical rhythms than we ever realized.
It's wild to think that this 60,000-mile network isn't just keeping us alive. It's defining how we experience reality itself.
It is the silent partner in absolutely everything you do.
So for you listening right now, you're sitting there, maybe you're in traffic, maybe at the gym. Inside you, that launch is happening every single second, that rush through the aorta, that slow squeeze through the capillaries.
60,000 miles of traffic moving perfectly without you having to issue a single command.
It definitely makes you want to take better care of the roads.
It should. Eat your leafy greens. Go for a run. Keep the flow moving. Because as we've learned, the flow is everything.
We're just the maintenance crew until the nanobots get here.
That's a good way to look at it.
That covers 7. Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 6.
Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 6.
It's great to be back. And yet, we're getting close to the halfway point. I have to say, this one is a big one. It really represents a fundamental shift in how we should understand our own biology.
The title we've got for this one is The Independent Engine. And I'll be honest, when I first saw the headline in the research you sent, my first thought was, okay, this has to be a typo.
A typo.
Or, just some poetic license to make anatomy sound a little cooler than it is.
And what part felt poetic to you?
Well, the whole idea, the premise that the heart doesn't actually need the brain to function. I mean, we all grew up thinking the brain is the boss, right? It's the CEO, the commander-in-chief up there in the skull telling everything what to do.
Right. It tells the legs to walk, the lungs to breathe.
And you'd assume the heart to beat.
Yeah.
But you're telling me that's just wrong.
It's a common assumption, but yeah, it's wrong. We tend to see the body as this strict hierarchy. The brain dictates every single move. But fact number 6 shows us the heart plays by a completely different set of rules. It has what biologists call autonomy.
Autonomy.
And it is not a typo. It's a literal biological reality.
Yeah, it's like its own country, basically.
In a way, yeah. It operates under its own jurisdiction. And to really get this, we kind of have to go to a place that, well, it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. But it's where you can see the mechanics in action. We need to visualize a scenario in a hospital.
Okay, I'm with you. Let's unpack this. Set the scene for us.
So the sources describe this pretty grim scenario that unfortunately plays out in modern medicine all the time. You have a patient catastrophic injury, and they've been declared brain dead.
Right. So medically speaking, the person is gone. The lights are out.
The skull is silent. There's no consciousness, no thought, no personality.
Yeah.
The self, the thing that makes you you, it's gone. But if you look beneath the sternum,
The heart is still going.
perfectly, beat after beat, it continues its ancient rhythm. It is completely oblivious to the catastrophe that happened upstairs.
Wow.
The person is dead, but the engine keeps running. It doesn't know the brain shut down, and frankly, it doesn't care.
That is just, it's so unsettling. It creates this huge gap between the me and the machine that is my body. You'd think the heart would, I don't know, stop out of solidarity or something.
Biology doesn't really do solidarity. It does survival.
Yeah.
But it gets even more sci-fi than that. The source material asks us to visualize a transplant surgery. This is the moment that really drives the point home.
Okay, walk us through it.
Imagine a surgeon. They reach into the chest cavity, they clamp the major vessels, cut the connections,
Yeah.
and they physically lift the heart out of the body.
So it's completely severed. No nerves, no blood flow from the body. It's just a lump of muscle in a surgeon's hands.
Exactly. And then they place it into a sterile basin. It's filled with an oxygenated nutrient solution. Now, logic. Our intuition. It tells us it should just sit there, right?
It should stop. I mean, if you cut a lamp off from the power grid, the light goes out. If you cut a finger off, it doesn't keep wiggling.
But the heart is not a finger. In that bowl, completely severed from the body, the heart keeps beating.
In a bowl.
In a bowl. It doesn't stop. It might slow down a little bit, settle into its own rhythm, but that rhythmic contraction, it just continues. It pulses.
That is such a visceral image. It's almost creepy, like the heart has a mind of its own.
Well, it doesn't have a mind, but it absolutely has a method. And before we get into comparing it with other muscles, we really need to dig into why this happens, because it's not magic. It's a very specific piece of evolutionary engineering.
So what's the mechanism? If the brain isn't sending that electrical spark down the wire to tell it to contract, where is the spark coming from?
It's an internal spark. This is where we have to get just a little technical, but it's brilliant. The heart has this tiny cluster of specialized cells in the upper right chamber called the sinoatrial node, the SA node.
The natural pacemaker, I've heard of that.
You have. But most people think pacemaker just means it regulates speed. It does more, it generates the command itself. See, most cells in your body, a nerve cell, a regular muscle cell, they're stable. They sit there with a negative electrical charge, just waiting.
Waiting to be told what to do.
Exactly. They won't do anything unless an external signal comes along and tells them to fire. But the cells in the SA node, they're different. They are biologically restless. They're leaky. So think of it like a dripping faucet. These cells have these little channels that just naturally let positive ions, like sodium, drift inside. They can't hold their charge steady. So slowly, the electrical tension builds up. Drip, 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 until it hits a threshold.
And then what?
Snap. It fires. An electrical zap spreads through the rest of the heart and causes that squeeze. Then it resets and immediately starts leaking again. Drip, drip, drip.
Fire. So it's a self-contained timing loop? It's actually hard-coded into the cell itself?
It is a genetic program playing out on a molecular level. It's automatic. It doesn't need a brain to tell it to leak. It just does. And this mechanism is ancient. It predates human consciousness by hundreds of millions of years.
It's like a wind-up toy where the spring just never winds down as long as you keep feeding it fuel.
Or an engine that keeps idling even after the driver gets out of the car and walks away.
Okay, that explains the zombie heart in the basin. But I want to push back on something. How is this so different from, say, my bicep? They're both muscles, they both contract. Why is one a puppet and the other isn't?
Ah, right, the puppet comparison. This is a great way to think about it. Your skeletal muscles, the ones you use to move around, they are fundamentally different tissue. They're puppets.
Puppets.
Absolutely. They're attached to strings, and those strings are the motor neurons coming from your brain. If you want to pick up a coffee cup, your brain has to consciously or unconsciously pull that string.
And if you cut the string,
The puppet collapses. If you sever the nerve to your bicep, that muscle just becomes flaccid. It can't move on its own. It's entirely dependent on the master pulling the strings. It has no SA node. It is silent until it's spoken to.
so the skeletal muscle is a soldier waiting for orders. What's the heart?
Let's use a different metaphor. Think of the body as a nation. The brain is the federal government. It sits in the capital city, the skull. It handles the big picture stuff, looking for food, scanning for threats, issuing general commands.
Okay, brain is the feds. Got it.
The heart, though, it's more like an autonomous region or a clockwork island off the coast. It's part of the nation, absolutely critical to it, but it has its own constitution, its own internal governance.
It has home rule.
Exactly. It doesn't need the federal government to tell it when to open the shops or run the buses. It runs on its own schedule, driven by that leaky membrane we talked about.
But wait, I have to challenge that a little bit. Because I know for a fact my heart rate changes based on what I'm thinking or feeling. If I hear a noise downstairs at night, my heart starts pounding before I even move. That is the brain talking to the heart. So isn't the autonomy kind of an illusion?
That is the crucial nuance. You're right. It's autonomous, but it's not isolated. There are nerves that connect the brain to the heart. But, and this is the key distinction, those nerves are not commanders. They are ambassadors.
Ambassadors sounds a little soft. If I'm sprinting away from a threat, my brain isn't just suggesting a higher heart rate. It's screaming for it. How is that not a command?
It feels like a command, but what's happening mechanically is modulation. The brain sends a signal down, we're in danger, dump adrenaline, speed up the cycle. And what that does is it makes those leaky cells leak faster. It shortens the time between the drifts.
Ah, I see. So it's stepping on the gas pedal, but it isn't the engine itself.
Exactly. And the opposite is true. The brain can say, we're sleeping, slow the leak, conserve energy. But here's the proof that they're just ambassadors. If you cut those nerves, the heart doesn't stop.
It just defaults.
It defaults to its base rate, which is about 100 beats per minute. That's the natural rhythm of the SA node without any outside influence. The brain modulates, but it doesn't originate. The heart generates the music. The brain just adjusts the volume and the tempo.
That distinction is subtle, but it is massive. It really changes everything.
And why do you think evolution designed it this way? Why have this rogue organ doing its own thing?
My guess would be a fail-safe, redundancy. If the brain goes offline for a second, like you faint, you definitely don't want the heart to stop too.
Redundancy is a huge part of it.
Yeah.
But there's another reason, speed. In the tech world, we'd call this edge computing.
Okay, break that down for me.
So in a huge computer network, you don't want to send every tiny piece of data all the way back to the central server for processing. It's too slow, it's inefficient. So you have processing happen right there at the source, at the edge of the network.
The heart is an intelligent edge device.
It's distributed intelligence.
Yeah.
The heart can respond to local chemical signals, like a drop in oxygen, immediately, without having to wait for a permission slip from the brain. It's a brilliant survival mechanism.
So the heart is basically saying, look, I'm too important to wait for the CEO to read his email. I'm just going to keep us alive.
And that keep us alive part.
Yeah.
That leads us to the biggest question this fact raises, because this biological brilliance creates some serious philosophical trouble for us.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, because we start to blur the lines of what it even means to be alive.
We do. I mean, think about it. For thousands of years, how did we define death?
You check for a pulse or a breath. But number one was, if the heart stops, you're dead. Cardiac death.
Exactly. The stopping of the heart was death. But modern medicine has, well, it's made that simple definition almost meaningless.
Because we can restart them now. Defibrillators, CPR.
We can restart them. We can keep them beating with machines even when the brain is gone. We can take them out and put them in a basin. The independent engine forces us to realize the organism and the person are separable.
That being alive isn't just an on-off switch.
And technology is pushing this even further. We're not just restarting hearts, we're replacing them. The source mentions a specific technology, continuous flow pumps.
Continuous flow. I've heard of that. This is the turbine, right? Not a pump.
Exactly. Old artificial hearts tried to mimic the thump, but mechanically that's a nightmare. All those moving parts break down. So engineers realized, hey, it's much more efficient to just use a spinning rotor to push the blood.
Like a little jet engine. Or just turning on a garden hose. A constant stream.
A constant, smooth stream.
How? Hang on. If the blood is moving in a smooth stream...
There's no heartbeat.
No pulse.
No pulse. You could have one of these devices walk into a doctor's office completely conscious, talking and laughing, and the doctor could put a stethoscope to your chest and hear nothing. Or maybe a faint whirring sound, like a computer fan.
That is just incredibly eerie. A living person with no pulse. Like a ghost in a machine.
It sounds like something out of science fiction.
Yeah.
But think about the human side of that. There are studies on the partners of people with these devices. Imagine laying your head on your spouse's chest at night and hearing just a hum or silence.
That would be terrifying. I mean, the heartbeat is the rhythm of life itself. It's in our poetry, our music. To lose that connection,
Wow.
that has to do something to your psyche.
It disconnects us from our own biology. But it's the ultimate proof of fact 6. The rhythm is just a mechanism, a brilliant autonomous pump, but it is not you.
So what does this mean for our identity? If I can replace the heart with a turbine and the brain doesn't even know the difference?
It forces us to confront that life and consciousness are two different things. We mix them up all the time. We think life is the beating heart. But consciousness, the part of you that's capable of even thinking about this stuff, that's something else entirely. The heart is just the engine room. It keeps the lights on, but it doesn't care who's living in the house.
It's a terrible autonomy, isn't it?
It is. It's fascinating, but it is cold.
It's beautiful from an engineering perspective, but there's something so indifferent about it. The heart is loyal to the biology, not the biography.
Loyal to the biology, not the biography. I like that. That's exactly it. It'll keep pumping for the surgeon holding it in a basin just as hard as it pumped for the parent holding their newborn child. It just follows its programming until the fuel runs out.
Well, on that note, which is equal parts awe-inspiring and existential crisis-inducing, we should probably wrap this one up.
Indeed. The heart is a marvel, but it's a marvel that runs on its own time.
That covers 6. Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 5.
Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 5.
Yeah, and this one marks a pretty significant shift in our list. We're moving away from the structural stuff we talked about, the pipes and the pumps, and into something, well, almost elemental.
It really is. The headline for this deep dive is the 2600 Flash Lightning Storm. Now, I have to admit, when I first saw that in the source material, my brain went straight to meteorology.
Right, Catatumbo lightning or something.
Exactly. I was picturing some kind of freak weather event. But that's not what we're talking about, is it?
Not even close. We're not talking about the atmosphere. We're talking about your chest cavity.
Specifically, what is happening inside your chest right this second. So let's set the scene here before we get into the heavy physics.
Good idea.
I want you, if you're listening and you're not, landing a plane or something, to just take a second. Place a hand over your heart.
Go on, do it. It really helps to feel it.
You feel that, right? Thump, 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 thump. it feels mechanical, like a little engine in there.
That's the sensation, yes. You're feeling the mechanical output, the hydraulic result. But the sources are very clear. That physical thump is, well, it's a kind of deception.
Or at least the final act of the play.
Exactly. What initiates that thump, the thing that actually causes the muscle to move, is a silent, invisible electrical storm.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack the staggering electrical engineering required to keep you alive. We're talking voltage, a biological internet, and honestly, the sci-fi future of controlling this whole system.
It's a genuine engineering marvel. I mean, if you look at the heart purely as a physics problem, it creates this profound sense of awe. It really shouldn't work as well as it does.
So let's visualize this storm within, because the source material just throws these massive numbers at us right away.
Right. And to understand the scale, you have to zoom way in past the organ itself. We need to look at the cardiac myocytes.
The individual heart muscle cells.
Correct. And here's the core mechanism. With every single heartbeat, approximately 3 billion of these cells have to depolarize.
Okay, depolarize. Let's pause there for a second. It's one of those words you hear in biology class. What's actually happening to the cell?
Sure, so think of a living cell like a tiny battery. It maintains a charge difference. When it's resting, it's negatively charged inside, about negative 90 millivolts.
So it's holding tension, like a drawn bowstring.
That's a perfect way to put it. It has resting potential. Now, when the signal to beat comes, channels in the cell wall open up, ions rush in, and that charge just flips.
Flips how much?
It swings all the way from negative 90 up to plus 30 millivolts in just a few milliseconds.
A total swing of 120 millivolts.
That's the action potential. That's the spark.
Which, on its own, sounds tiny, 120 millivolts. But the source makes this great comparison. It says if you scale it up, it's basically like flipping a light switch.
Right. One cell, one light switch. Now imagine 3 billion light switches flipping at the same time.
That is a lot of switches.
It creates a massive electromagnetic event. I mean, that's why we can put electrodes on your ankles and still pick up an EKG. You're broadcasting this signal.
And it happens over and over.
Roughly 100,000 times every single day.
I love the math here. 3 billion cells times that 120 millivolt change times 100,000 beats a day. I mean, the numbers are just mind-bending.
They are. Here's the one stat that always gets me. If you calculate the total number of these cellular depolarizations over a lifetime, the heart generates more electrical events than there are stars in the Milky Way galaxy.
Oh, wait, say that again?
More electrical events than stars in our galaxy. We're talking roughly 10 trillion depolarizations every year.
That's astounding.
Yeah.
You know, we look up at the night sky and feel small, but internally, we're generating these cosmic scale numbers just sitting here.
And here's the key difference from a real thunderstorm. A storm in nature discharges its energy, and then it dissipates, runs out of fuel.
But this storm
never stops. As long as you have oxygen and glucose, the lightning just keeps striking. It's a storm that never runs out of rain.
Okay, so if we could see this. The source mentioned some animals, like sharks, can actually perceive this electricity.
Right. They have what are called the ampullae of Lorenzini. They're basically biological voltmeters. A shark can see the electrical field of a fish hiding in the sand.
So if we borrow that shark vision for a minute, what would this storm look like? Is it just a random flash?
No, and that's the beautiful part. If it was random, you'd be in cardiac arrest. It's not a chaotic flash, it's a perfectly choreographed wave.
A wave.
Imagine a glowing ripple of light starting at the top of the heart, in the atria, and just sweeping across the surface.
Okay, so a wave of light moving down.
Then, and this is the most fascinating part from an engineering perspective, it pauses.
It pauses.
Just for a fraction of a second, at a little cluster of cells called the AV node. The source calls it storm clouds gathering. The energy just holds there.
Why? Why does it have to wait?
For the hydraulics to work. The top chambers have to finish squeezing blood into the bottom chambers. If they all be at once, the blood would have nowhere to go.
So that tiny little pause is actually the difference between life and death.
Absolutely. It lets the ventricles fill up properly.
So the storm gathers. And then
an explosive, lightning-like discharge shoots down through the ventricles. That's the big squeeze. That's the main beat you feel.
it's a performance. It's not just a spasm.
A perfectly coordinated performance 100,000 times a day with no conductor.
And that leads us perfectly into the next big idea from the source. This isn't just a battery, it's a network. The source calls it the biological internet.
Yes. This is where the engineering gets really interesting, especially if you're into computer science.
The analogy is that instead of fiber optics and routers, you have living cells. And instead of data packets, you're transmitting waves of ionic charge.
But there's a huge difference in how it's organized. It's what we call distributed computing.
Meaning, there's no central processor,
Yeah.
no CPU.
Exactly. There's no central command. There is no one master cell that tells all the other 3 billion cells when to fire.
And what about the pacemaker? The SA node, isn't that the boss?
That's a great question and a common misconception. The SA node starts the wave. It's the first domino to fall, but it doesn't control what happens after that.
So how do they all stay in sync? If there's no boss, why isn't it just chaos?
It's solved through physical connection. The source talks about gap junctions.
Gap junctions.
Think of them like open doors between every single cell. When one cell fires, that electrical change literally leaks through the door to its neighbor, causing it to fire.
So it's like a stadium wave.
That is the perfect analogy, exactly like a stadium wave. The person in seat A triggers seat B. The pattern just emerges from those local interactions.
That's wild. It's a peer-to-peer network.
It's distributed computing in its purest form. The system solves this incredibly complex coordination problem with physics, not with software code.
Which also raises the stakes, right? I mean, if my internet drops a packet, my video just buffers for a second. But here,
the stakes are absolute. The source really emphasizes the fragility. Timing errors of just a few milliseconds can be catastrophic.
how so?
Well, if that stadium wave hits a block, say, a bit of scar tissue, it can't go forward. So it might turn around and start spinning in a circle.
It starts chasing its own tail.
Exactly. It forms a re-entrant loop. And instead of that coordinated thump, the signal just swirls chaotically.
And that's what an arrhythmia is.
That is ventricular fibrillation. The storm turns into chaos and the heart just quivers. It stops pumping blood.
The network crashes.
A permanent 404 error, yeah. That network has to maintain coherence across billions of cycles without any supervision. It's amazing it works at all.
Truly. So we've got this storm, this biological internet. But the source takes a turn here that I found really gripping, into the future. Because right now, if that storm goes wrong, we have one basic tool.
The defibrillator.
Which is, let's be honest, it's pretty crude.
Extremely crude. It's a sledgehammer. A defibrillator just blasts the entire heart with voltage to reset everything. It's like fixing a frozen computer by yanking the power cord out of the wall.
Right. It works, but it's not elegant. The source, though, talks about optogenetics. This sounds like something from a cyberpunk novel.
It kind of is. This is where we're heading. Optogenetics is the technique of genetically engineering cells, in this case heart cells, to respond to light.
Respond to light. You shine a light on the heart and it beats.
It's essentially, yes. You can insert a gene, often from algae, that makes the heart cells light sensitive. So they'll only fire when they're hit with, say, a specific wavelength of blue light.
Okay, so why is that useful?
Well, imagine instead of a giant electric shock, you have tiny optical fibers in the heart. They detect the very beginning of that bad wave, that re-entrant loop.
And instead of shocking the whole chest.
They fire a pinpoint pulse of light at just those specific cells to nudge them back into the correct rhythm.
So it's a scalpel instead of a sledgehammer.
Precisely. You could stop an arrhythmia before it even really starts. You'd be editing the weather pattern in real time.
That's incredible. So you could stop a potential cardiac arrest before the person even knows it's happening.
That's the promise, yeah. A soft reset.
But there's always a but. The source mentions a darker side to this level of control.
It's the logical next step, unfortunately. If the heart is an electrical system that runs on specific frequencies.
Then it can be jammed.
Right. The source raises the concept of weaponization. Could you build a device that projects a precisely tuned electromagnetic signal to disrupt that rhythm from a distance?
That's terrifying. Hacking the biological internet.
It turns the heart into just another vulnerability. Physics says it's theoretically possible.
It's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
But I think the broader point the source is making, and this is what really got me,
Yeah.
is how this changes our view of the heart philosophically.
How do you mean?
Well, for centuries, the heart was this mystery, the seat of the soul. But what we're describing here argues that the storm isn't random. It's a deterministic physical process.
It's just math.
It's just equations.
No.
We're mapping every ion channel, modeling every wavefront, we're turning the mystery into a controllable parameter.
Which brings us to the big question from this deep dive. And I agree, this is the one that it gives you a bit of an existential crisis.
The source asks, if the heart is just another programmable device that we can master and rewrite, Do we reduce it from a mysterious engine to justly a machine?
We like to think there's a ghost in the machine, right? Something special that keeps us going. But if we can install new software to regulate the beat...
Yeah, if a device is using light to force my heart into a perfect rhythm,
Yeah.
am I still...
Why?
Is that continuity of self still there?
Especially because the heart's rhythm is responsive. It changes when you're scared or when you see someone you love. It's supposed to be variable.
Exactly. Your heart races when you're excited.
But if we take control of that storm, if we regulate it perfectly to prevent any disease, do we lose that emotional resonance?
Oh, wow. I never thought of that. Imagine a heart so perfectly engineered that it doesn't flutter when you fall in love because an algorithm sees it as an anomaly and corrects it.
Precisely. We might optimize the pathology out of the system, but do we optimize the humanity out of it too?
That is heavy. It's the classic conflict between safety and experience. We want to control the storm, but the chaos of the storm is part of what makes us feel alive.
And that transition from biological mystery to a controllable parameter, that's the story of our time, really.
It's wild to think that this organ poets wrote about for millennia is essentially a battery-operated distributed computing network that we're just about to figure out how to hack.
But even if we understand it, the sheer scale of it remains humbling. 3 billion cells, synchronized, 10 trillion times a lifetime. It's still a miracle. It's just a miracle made of physics.
A miracle made of physics. I like that. It lands perfectly. It acknowledges the science without losing the wonder.
It removes the magic, maybe, but replaces it with awe. The engineering is way more impressive than the magic ever was.
I think that's a great way to put it. When you really picture that glowing wave inside your chest, you realize that staying alive is an incredibly active process.
It's happening right now as we're talking about it.
Right now, my storm is raging. Your storm is raging. And hopefully the listener's storm is chugging along nicely too.
Let's hope so.
It really makes you want to take care of the equipment, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So I think the takeaway is this mix of gratitude and wonder. We are walking power plants.
And we are on the edge of a revolution that might just give us the keys to the control room.
Whether we should use those keys, that's the debate for the next generation.
Indeed. Well, that was a fascinating one. It's amazing how much complexity is hidden in a simple heartbeat.
Just remember, next time you feel that pulse, it's not a bump, it's a lightning strike.
A 2600 flash lightning storm. Incredible.
And it's keeping the lights on.
That covers 5. Ready for the next one? Let's head to Fact 4. Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 4.
It is good to be here. And, looking at the trajectory of this countdown, we've spent a lot of time on the sheer mechanics of the heart.
Yeah.
We've discussed the pump, the volume, the electrical voltage. But fact number 4, this is a hard pivot.
It really is.
We are leaving the world of plumbing and entering the world of, data processing.
Which is exactly where I got stuck in the research. I mean, I had to read the primary source for this one twice because, frankly, it sounds like a metaphor at first glance.
Right.
We're talking about the little brain in the heart. And I don't mean brain in the poetic sense, like follow your heart. I mean actual biology. But I have to play the skeptic right out of the gate here. The source claims there are neurons in the heart.
That is correct.
But let's look at the numbers, the research highlights. I think it was approximately 40,000 neurons in this intrinsic cardiac nervous system.
About that, yes.
Now, 40,000 sounds like a lot if you're counting jelly beans, but my brain, the one in my skull, has roughly 86 billion neurons. So calling a cluster of 40,000 cells a brain, it feels like a massive exaggeration.
I get it.
Is this just marketing, or is there real functional complexity here?
It is a valid skepticism. And if you compare it strictly on volume, the cranial brain wins every single time. But in neurology, it isn't just about the head count.
It's the architecture.
It's the architecture and the autonomy. These 40,000 neurons aren't just, passive cables or simple relays. They are organized into complex ganglia clusters of nerve cell bodies that process information independently of the central nervous system.
So they aren't just taking a call from the brain and passing it on.
No, and that's the crucial distinction. If you look at the histology, the microscopic structure, these cardiac neurons are identical to the ones in your head.
Really? Identical?
They have dendrites for receiving signals, axons for sending them. But it goes deeper. They synthesize and release neurotransmitters.
You mean like dopamine?
Exactly. Dopamine, norepinephrine, acetylcholine, the same chemicals your brain uses to process pleasure, survival, memory. They're being produced and cycled right there in the chest cavity.
So it's a chemical factory, not just a wire.
It is. So when we say little brain, we are referring to a self-contained neural network that can sense, process, and react without needing to check in with headquarters upstairs.
Okay, that adds some weight to the claim. It's got the hardware and the chemistry. So let's talk about where this hardware lives. I was looking at the diagrams in the source material, and it seems like these ganglia aren't just sitting in one lump. They're woven into the tissue.
Right. If you were to peel back the pericardium, that protective sac we've discussed before, and look at the epicardial surface, you'd see what looks like fat and muscle. But under a high-powered microscope, you find this neural web.
It's distributed.
It's distributed. It wraps around the base of the major arteries and weaves through the atrial walls.
Which makes sense if its job is monitoring. I noticed the text mentioned they are specifically sensing mechanical stretch.
Yes, and this is where distributed intelligence becomes literal. Because these neurons are embedded in the walls of the heart chambers, they're constantly measuring the volume of blood coming in.
So if the atrial wall stretches too much,
Thinking volume is high. If the pressure in the ventricle spikes, they feel that tension. They are physically monitoring the mechanics of the pump from the inside.
but they're also tasting the blood, right? That was the part that surprised me.
Correct. They have chemoreceptors. They're monitoring oxygen levels, carbon dioxide, circulating hormones. So this little brain has a complete dashboard of the body's physiological state. It knows the pressure, the volume, and the chemical composition of the fuel.
Which brings us to the so what factor. Why do we need a local processor? The brain is pretty fast. Why can't the heart just send a quick email to the brain saying, hey, pressure is low, and then, wait for instructions?
Because of latency. In biological systems, speed is survival. The source material uses a great example to illustrate this. Orthostatic hypotension.
That's the medical term for the head rush you get when you stand up too fast.
Exactly. Think about the physics for a second. You are sitting on the couch. Your blood is pooling in your legs and your gut. Suddenly, you stand up. Gravity immediately tries to drag all that blood down away from your brain.
And if physics won, I'd pass out cold every time I got off the sofa.
You would. Your blood pressure would plummet and your brain would starve of oxygen. To prevent that, the heart has to react instantly.
Right.
It needs to increase the heart rate and contract with more force to fight gravity. If that signal had to travel from the heart up the spinal cord to the brainstem, get processed, and then sent all the way back down.
We're talking milliseconds of delay.
Yes, but those milliseconds matter. That lag could be the difference between staying upright and fainting. The intrinsic cardiac nervous system, the little brain, detects that drop in pressure locally and initiates the correction immediately. It speeds up the heart before the conscious brain even realizes you've changed posture.
It's edge computing.
It is exactly edge computing.
For the non-techies listening, edge computing is where you process data, right, where it's collected, like a self-driving car processing road hazards on its own computer.
Right.
Rather than sending the video to a server in a different city and waiting for a response.
That is a perfect analogy. The heart handles the immediate, high-speed adjustments locally. It creates a feedback loop that is incredibly tight and fast.
This leads perfectly into the major analogy this source uses, which is the fly-by-wire system in modern aircraft.
Yeah.
I found this really helpful to separate the roles. So, in this scenario, the brain, the big one in the skull, is the pilot.
Right. The pilot has the intent. The pilot says, I want to run a marathon, or I want to take a nap, or I need to sprint to that bus. The brain sets the strategic goal.
But the pilot doesn't know how to manage the engine valves. Not really.
Exactly. If the pilot had to manually adjust every flap, every fuel injector, and every stabilizer for every single gust of wind, they'd be overwhelmed. They couldn't fly the plane. So modern jets have onboard computers that handle this stability. They monitor wind shear, fuel distribution, structural stress, and they make thousands of micro adjustments per second to keep the plane flying smooth.
And that's the heart's little brain. It's the flight computer.
Precisely. It manages the microstability. It ensures that when the brain screams run, the heart ramps up smoothly without going into a chaotic arrhythmia. It dampens the oscillations. It's a sophisticated control system that translates the brain's clumsy commands into precise mechanical performance.
There's a resilience aspect here too, isn't there? The distributed architecture that was mentioned in the notes.
Yes, this is crucial for survival. If you cut the connection between the brain and the heart, say, in a severe spinal injury or during a heart transplant, the heart doesn't stop.
It keeps beating.
It keeps beating. The little brain can maintain the rhythm independently. It won't be as responsive to the outside world without the brain's input, but the basic life support function continues.
Wow.
It has redundancy built in. If one ganglion fails, others take over. It's an incredibly robust system.
So we've established that this little brain keeps us from fainting and keeps the engine running smooth. But the research takes a turn here that I think is really the core of this deep dive. It moves from mechanics to emotions. And it links these 40,000 neurons to something called heart rate variability, or HRV.
This is the bridge between the biology and the psychology.
I see HRV on my fitness tracker.
Yeah.
And I always assumed that a steady heart rate was good.
Yeah.
You know, like you want a metronome, right? Tick, tick, tick. Perfectly consistent.
Yeah.
But the reading suggests that's actually a sign of sickness.
That is a very common misconception. A heart that beats like a rigid metronome is a heart that is not listening to its environment. It's a sign of stress or age or pathology.
Okay.
A healthy heart has high variability. The time gap between beats is constantly changing by milliseconds, adjusting to your breathing, your thoughts, your posture.
So chaos, or at least variation, is a sign of health.
It's a sign of adaptability. And this variation is controlled by the little brain acting as a mediator between two branches of your nervous system. The sympathetic, which is your gas pedal, the fight or flight response,
Right.
and the parasympathetic, which is the brake, the rest, and digest.
Okay, so the brain is sending these conflicting signals. Speed up, slow down.
And the cardiac neurons are integrating those signals. When the system is working perfectly, the heart just dances between them. It speeds up slightly when you inhale, slows down when you exhale. This is high HRV.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
And the fascinating part is that high HRV correlates with better emotional regulation, better cognitive performance, and higher resilience to stress.
So if my heart's neural network is functioning well, if it's processing that data efficiently, I'm actually smarter, or at least clearer-headed.
You are more cognitively flexible. The research shows that when the heart's rhythm is coherent and adaptable, the brain's cortical function, the part responsible for logic and decision-making, actually improves.
This brings up the vagus nerve. We can't talk about this connection without talking about the vagus nerve. I always thought of nerves as one-way streets brain tells body what to do.
Right.
But the source dropped a statistic that blew my mind. 80% of the fibers in the vagus nerve are afferent.
Which means they carry signals from the body to the brain.
That completely flips the script. The brain isn't the CEO shouting orders. It's more like a listener.
It's a listener, a very active one. The heart is sending a massive amount of data upstream. It's sending information about emotional states, hormonal levels, and pressure. And this is where we get into the concept of intuition.
Right, I have a gut feeling, or my heart sank. We say these things all the time.
We dismiss those as metaphors, but physiologically, it's likely interoception. Your little brain detects a subtle shift in the environment, maybe a pheromone or a microexpression on someone's face that triggers a stress response in the blood.
Yeah.
The heart reacts first, changing its rhythm. That signal shoots up the vagus nerve to the brain.
So you physically feel the change in your chest, that flutter or drop, before your conscious mind explains, oh, I'm nervous.
Exactly. The feeling precedes the thought. The heart is an organ of perception. It is processing data that your conscious mind hasn't even accessed yet.
That is profound because it suggests that intelligence isn't centralized. We are a network. We have a brain, a gut, and a heart, all chatting constantly. Which leads us to the big question for this episode. And honestly, this one is a bit haunting. It's about the future of human identity and artificial heart.
This is where biology crashes into philosophy. We are getting very, very good at building mechanical pumps. Total artificial hearts, or TAH.
And these machines are miracles of engineering. They save lives. But they are just pumps. They have motors, rotors, batteries. They do not have the intrinsic cardiac nervous system.
No.
They don't have the 40,000 neurons.
They're disconnected from that vagus nerve feedback loop.
Yeah.
And there have been reports and studies, some mentioned in our source stack, referencing the psychological side effects of these devices.
I read about that. Patients reporting a sense of flatness or a disconnection from their emotions.
It's a phenomenon that needs more study, for sure, but it aligns with the theory. If you replace the biological heart with a machine that cannot generate those subtle variations, that cannot communicate via the vagus nerve, you are essentially cutting the phone line to the emotional center.
It's like a lobotomy of the emotional cells. You keep the body alive, you keep the blood moving, but do you lose the texture of the human experience?
That is the question. If feeling is actually a form of data processing done by the heart, then removing the heart removes a part of the thinker. It challenges the idea that I exist solely behind my eyes.
It also brings up the cellular memory concept the source touched on briefly. The anecdotes about transplant recipients taking on traits of their donors.
That is controversial territory, of course. Skeptics say it's statistical noise or coincidence. But if we accept that the heart contains a neural network that stores short-term memory or patterns of habituation, which neurons do, it's not scientifically impossible that some biological data is transferred with the organ.
It's the ghost in the machine.
Precisely.
But let's flip the coin. That's the replacement scenario. What about enhancement? If this is a neural network, can we upgrade it?
That is the sci-fi angle. If we could biologically engineer a heart with, say, 100,000 neurons instead of 40,000 and clearer pathways to the brain, what do we create?
A super feeler?
Maybe. Someone with heightened interoception. Someone who can detect the emotional state of a room instantly. Superior empathy. If the heart is an information processor, upgrading the processor should theoretically upgrade the output.
That is fascinating to think about. We spend so much time talking about Neuralink and brain chips, trying to upgrade the cranial brain, but maybe we're ignoring the other processors in the system.
It really emphasizes that we are a networked intelligence. We tend to view the body as a carriage for the brain, but Fact 4 tells us that the body is a participant. The heart has its own opinion, it makes its own decisions, and it informs the brain of what's real.
So the next time you feel that flutter in your chest, or that sudden drop when you hear bad news, remember, that's not just a muscle spasming, that is a computation. That is your little brain crunching data at a speed your conscious mind can't touch.
And often, it knows the truth before you do.
A terrifying and comforting thought all at once. We are uncovering some truly complex machinery in this countdown. And if you thought the heart having a brain was wild, wait until you see what we have lined up next.
I'm looking forward to it.
That covers 4. Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 3. Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 3.
This is the one I've been waiting for. It's a fact that really forces a complete recalibration of how you perceive your own biology.
It does.
We're going to take something incredibly intimate, that rhythm inside your chest, and connect it to a cosmic scale that feels, well, it feels almost abstract.
It is the ultimate bridge between the micro and the macro. So before we get into the thermodynamics and the biochemistry.
It's heavy stuff.
Exactly. I want to set the stage properly. If you're listening to this, and you can do so safely, I want you to visualize standing outside on a crystal clear winter night. You look up, and there's the moon.
And don't just glance at it. Try to, strip away the romance and the folklore for just a second. Look at it as a physical object. It is a rock, suspended in a vacuum.
A very, very distant rock. I mean, we are talking about 384,400 kilometers away.
Which is roughly 240,000 miles.
It's so far that light, the fastest thing in the known universe, takes over a second just to get there. There's a cold, silent, disconnected void between us and that cratered surface.
Right. It represents the elsewhere. It's the very symbol of distance.
Okay, now snap your focus back to Earth. Put your hand over your heart. Feel that steady, quiet thump-thump.
It feels small.
It feels local. It feels fragile.
It's barely a tremor, just a little hydraulic shift beneath your ribs.
But here is the core premise of fact number 3. That gentle pulse you are feeling right now, if you sum up its energy output over an average lifetime, generates enough work to physically propel an object from your front yard all the way to the surface of that moon.
Just to be completely clear, because I know we have some skeptics listening, we are not speaking metaphorically here. This isn't poetry about shooting for the moon. This is a hard physics calculation of joules, mass, and distance.
That is just a staggering claim, because when I'm out of breath after a jog or even just walking up a flight of stairs, I certainly don't feel like I'm harboring a Saturn V rocket.
Not at all.
I feel like I'm barely making it up the hill. So we really need to break down the energy budget. How do we get from a heartbeat to orbital mechanics?
Okay, so we have to start with the definition of work in a physics sense. Work is just force times distance. In the cardiovascular system, we measure this using something called pressure volume work.
The PV loop, I remember seeing those graphs in physics class. It's the area inside that loop that equals the work done, right?
Precisely. Every single time your heart enters systole, that's the contraction phase, it's pressurizing a chamber to force a specific volume of blood against the resistance of your arteries.
So it's a mechanical act.
It's a mechanical act of lifting a weight, essentially. It's lifting that column of blood against gravity and friction.
Okay.
Now, if you look at a single beat, the work is negligible. It's a fraction of a joule. You couldn't light a tiny LED with it for more than a split second.
Right.
But the magic of biology is in the repetition. We are talking about 2.5 billion cardiac cycles in an average life.
2.5 billion. That number is just, it's hard to wrap your head around.
And when you integrate that area under the curve, when you sum up those 2.5 billion tiny explosions of pressure, the total energy budget becomes massive. The source material uses a really great visualization here, the invisible thread.
I really like this image. It asks you to imagine a beam of light, or maybe a physical thread, connecting your chest directly to the lunar surface.
And every single beat pays out a little more line. It's like a cumulative construction project.
So when you're a kid, that thread is just, what, pushing through the troposphere?
Barely. But then by your 20s, you're already crossing the orbital paths of GPS satellites.
Wow. And by the time you reach middle age,
You're passing geostationary orbit. And as you reach the end of a long life, that invisible thread of accumulated work has traversed the vacuum, it's crossed the Van Allen radiation belts, and it has touched down in the Sea of Tranquility.
that completely changes how you view the passage of time. We usually measure life in years or memories. This measures life in distance traversed.
And it highlights the power density of the heart. If you could somehow capture all that wasted heat and kinetic energy and store it in a perfectly efficient capacitor, you would have the gigajoules required to launch a small vehicle.
Okay, but this is where I think we need to ground this for the listener, because energy to reach the moon is abstract. We need to compare the biological engine to, the gold standard of getting to the moon. We need to talk about the space shuttle.
The absolute epitome of brute force engineering.
Right. I mean, I'm a space nerd. When I think of the shuttle, I think of the RS-25 main engines. The fire, the smoke, shaking the ground 3 miles away. It's violence controlled by math.
The shuttle is a beast. At liftoff, the main engines and the solid rocket boosters are generating roughly 37 million horsepower.
37 million.
And to get to orbit, which is just the first step, it burns through nearly 500,000 gallons of propellant.
Liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen. Cryogenic, incredibly volatile, high-energy stuff kept at hundreds of degrees below zero.
And here is the stat that always blows my mind. The main engines run for about 8.5 minutes. That is it.
Massive power, massive consumption, and a minuscule duration.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with the engine in your chest.
Which is smaller than a milk carton. It's about the size of your fist.
And it doesn't run for 8 minutes. It runs for 80 years. It doesn't have a giant external cooling system. It doesn't have a team of engineers at Houston Control monitoring the chamber pressure or scrubbing the CO2.
And it is definitely not burning liquid hydrogen.
Yeah, it runs on a turkey sandwich.
The fuel source is just ridiculous when you think about it that way. It's taking the chemical energy from a sandwich glucose and oxygen and converting it into hydraulic pressure.
It's a complete triumph of thermodynamics. Let's look at the efficiency rating. Cardiac muscle converts approximately 20 to 25% of that chemical energy into mechanical work.
Now, to be fair, 25% might sound low to a layperson, but for a heat engine, that's actually really solid. That's comparable to a standard internal combustion car engine.
It is. But your car achieves that efficiency by exploding refined fuel at thousands of degrees inside heavy cast iron cylinders, your heart. It achieves that same efficiency at 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit.
In aqueous environment, as the paper said.
That's a wet, squishy engine. It's essentially underwater, and it's built from biodegradable parts. Imagine if NASA tried to build a rocket engine out of soft proteins and salt water.
And then asked it to run for a century without any maintenance. Which brings us to the self-maintenance aspect the source highlighted.
This is the ship of Theseus concept in action. The heart is repairing its own wear and tear while it is running.
Without skipping a beat.
It's swapping out protein chains, repairing cellular damage, all in real time. It's like a mechanic trying to change the pistons on a car while it's doing 70 down the highway.
So we have an engine that is small, runs on snacks, operates underwater, rebuilds itself, and generates moon rocket energy levels.
That sums it up pretty well.
But I want to drill down into the how, because saying it runs on glucose is, high school biology. We need to get into the mechanism. How does a squishy, soft organ generate enough pressure to spray blood across a room without just exploding?
For that, we have to zoom in, way in. We need to talk about the sarcomere.
The basic unit of muscle tissue.
Right, so inside every heart muscle cell, you have these overlapping filaments, actin and myosin. You can think of them like a rowing crew.
Okay, I'm picturing the crew in the boat.
Myosin has these tiny little heads, they're molecular motors. When the signal comes to contract, which is fueled by calcium ions, billions of these tiny heads reach out, they grab the actin filament, and they pull. It's called a power stroke.
So it's like a tug of war. Hand over hand, pulling the rope.
Precisely. Each individual pull uses a tiny microcalorie of ATP, that's adenosine triphosphate. That's the molecular currency derived from your sandwich.
One pull does almost nothing.
Almost nothing, but when you synchronize billions of them instantly,
You get a massive surge of force.
you get systole. You get the heartbeat. This is power density. It's the maximum output from the minimum mass. And evolution has optimized the spacing of these proteins so perfectly that if they were even a fraction of a nanometer off, the heart would fail.
And this connects to the Frank Starling law, right? The idea that the heart automatically adjusts its force based on how much blood fills it.
Exactly. The more the muscle is stretched by incoming blood, the more optimal the overlap between that actin and myosin becomes, and so the harder it snaps back. It's a mechanical feedback loop that's built right into the fiber itself. No computer required.
It's optimized for the specific viscosity of blood and the, 60,000 miles of the human circulatory system?
It creates just enough pressure to push through all of that, but not so much that it bursts the delicate capillaries in your eyes or your kidneys. It operates on a razor-thin margin.
And it hits that margin 2.5 billion times in a row.
If you treat the body well, yes.
This brings us to the future, and frankly, this is the part of the research that gets a little sci-fi. Because if we accept that the heart is just a pump mechanical device governed by physics, then theoretically we can improve it.
This is what some call the bionic horizon. We already have total artificial hearts, or TAH.
But TAH right now are mostly just bridges to transplant, aren't they? I mean, we're just trying to keep people alive. We aren't giving them superpowers.
Correct. The current engineering challenge is durability and biocompatibility, making sure the machine doesn't, blend the blood cells or cause clots. We are just trying to match nature's baseline.
But what if we stopped trying to match nature? What if we tried to beat it?
Well, that is the super athlete scenario. Remember, we said the heart is 20 to 25% efficient. That means 75% of the energy from your food is just lost as heat.
It's waste. Which, honestly, is nice on a cold day, but it's pretty inefficient for an engine.
Thermodynamics is a cruel master. But what if we engineered a synthetic heart that operated at, say, 40% efficiency? Or 60%?
You'd have a massive power output. But wouldn't you run into a heat problem? Or a fuel delivery problem? If I put a Ferrari engine in a Honda Civic, the transmission falls out.
That's the catch. The biological heart is rate limited by how fast it can get oxygen. If you built a super heart, you would need super lungs to feed it.
So it's a systems engineering problem. You can't just upgrade the engine. You have to upgrade the fuel lines and the intake manifold too.
Exactly, but speculatively. If you solved that, you could create humans with vastly extended endurance. People who could run at a full sprint for hours because their oxygen delivery system is effectively turbocharged.
That sounds incredible, but also, I don't know, it feels like we're turning the human body into a sports car. It frames life as an optimization problem.
Well, in many ways, biology is an optimization problem. Think about that finite budget concept we started with.
The 2.5 billion beats.
Right, it's like a bank account. Every beat draws from a limited balance, and stress accelerates the expenditure.
So when I'm stressed about a deadline and my heart rate spikes to 100 while I'm just sitting in a chair,
you are burning rocket fuel on the launch pad. You are spending your moon travel budget without going anywhere.
that is a terrifying way to look at anxiety.
But it's pragmatic. Disease makes the engine less efficient. High blood pressure means the heart has to work harder. It has to do more pressure volume work for the exact same result. It burns through the budget faster.
So the strategy for longevity is essentially hyper-efficiency, a lower resting heart rate, better stroke volume.
Maximize the distance you get per beat. That's the goal of every endurance athlete, and really it should be the goal of every human.
What?
Yeah?
And I feel like I have to push back on this a little.
Yeah.
Is that all we are, just an efficiency equation. Because if we reduce the heart to just a pump that we need to optimize, we lose something important.
And that is the philosophical pivot. That's where the so what of all this comes in.
Because when I put my hand on my heart at the beginning of this deep dive, I wasn't thinking about ATP hydrolysis or PV loops. I was feeling, well, me.
The source material makes a really profound point here about consciousness. We can do the math. We can compare it to the shuttle. But the heart isn't just a pump. It's the substrate of experience.
Right. The brain gets all the credit for thinking and feeling. But the brain is an energy hog. It demands 20% of the body's oxygen.
And the heart is the utility company that keeps the lights on. Without that steady rhythm, without those 2.5 billion beats providing high-pressure oxygenated blood, the brain shuts down in seconds.
So the power to reach the moon is actually the power to perceive the moon.
Exactly. That ordinary matter, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, has been organized by evolution into this specific configuration to sustain awareness. It pumps the oxygen that allows you to even have a thought. It sustains your awareness long enough for that awareness to look up at the night sky and wonder about the distance.
That's a beautiful loop. The heart provides the energy for the brain to understand the heart.
Without that engine, there is no wonder. There's no science, there's no this.
It really is the engine of our reality.
It moves you through time. It moves you through your life.
It's funny, we started this by looking at the moon, something so far away. But the power to get there is actually sitting right here, inside every one of us.
It bridges that gap. It connects the cosmic scale to the personal scale.
It makes you respect the machinery a little more, doesn't it? We tend to just ignore it until something breaks.
We take it for granted. It's just there. But when you realize it's performing a lunar mission level of work, silently, day after day, you have to give it some credit.
And it does it all on a turkey sandwich.
And a turkey sandwich.
You know, going back to that invisible thread visualization one last time. If we are all building these threads to the moon throughout our lives.
We're all astronauts, in a way.
We are. We're all generating this massive output. It's just contained.
Contained but vital. And remember, that thread only stops when the work is done. It's a project that lasts an entire lifetime.
So what does this mean for how we live? If I know I have a finite budget, and I know I have this massive potential energy,
I think it implies a kind of responsibility to the engine. Don't waste the budget on things that don't matter. Recognize that chronic stress, anger, poor health, these are all leaks in the fuel tank.
don't burn your rocket fuel on the launch pad. Use it to actually go somewhere.
Use it to sustain experiences, connections, thoughts, because that is what the energy is ultimately for. It's not just to keep the tissue alive, it's to keep the person alive.
And maybe, just maybe, when we look up at the moon, we shouldn't see it as this distant, unreachable thing. We should see it as a yardstick.
A measure of our own internal power.
I love that. It turns the moon into a mirror.
And it reminds us that while we are biological, and yes, we are fragile, we are also incredibly powerful. We are pressurized vessels of energy.
A 300-gram engine doing the work of a Titan rocket.
On a much, much longer timeline.
On a much longer timeline, but getting there all the same.
Persistence is power.
Before we wrap this up, there's one last thought I want to throw out there. We talked about the rhythm. You mentioned in the notes that the heartbeat isn't just a pump, it's also a metronome.
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the history of human culture, music, poetry, so much of it is centered around, 70 beats per minute.
Iambic pentameter.
W-M. It's the heartbeat. If we ever do build that super heart, or maybe a continuous flow artificial heart that doesn't beat.
Which exists, by the way, continuous flow pumps. There are patients with no pulse.
Right. If everyone had those, would our music change? Would our poetry change? If you change the engine, you change the rhythm. And if you change the rhythm, you might just change the culture.
That is a wild thought. The power to reach the moon is also the power to be human.
It's the backbeat of our entire existence.
Oh, that is a lot to process. I don't think I'm going to be able to feel my pulse quite the same way again. It feels a little heavier now, a little more significant.
It should. It's doing heavy lifting.
It is indeed. And for everyone listening, next time you are out on a clear night, look up. Find that moon. And remember the invisible thread connecting you to it. You built that, beat by beat.
Just don't forget to take care of the engine.
Absolutely. Eat a sandwich, take a breath, and appreciate the engineering.
And enjoy the view.
That covers 3.
Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 2.
Welcome back. We are moving right along in our countdown. Let's dive into fact number 2.
Number 2. And I have to say, we're really getting into the heavy hitters now. This one is, well, it's visceral.
Visceral is the perfect word for it. I've been staring at the title for this section of the deep dive. And honestly, it sounds like the title of a B horror movie. Or maybe a very dangerous magic trick. The title is The 30-Foot Fountain.
It paints a picture, doesn't it?
It does, and not a particularly soothing one. My immediate reaction was a mix of awe and, I'll be honest, a little bit of nausea.
Sure, I get that.
Because when we talk about a fountain, in this context, we aren't talking about water features in a park. We're talking about blood and the sheer kind of terrifying force behind
But
that.
precisely, and the squeamishness is a natural reaction. But our goal here is to, push past the gore and really look at the engineering.
The engineer.
Because that fountain isn't just a horror trope. It represents raw, unadulterated hydraulic power. It is the story of pressure.
Right, so let's unpack this, because usually when I think of my heart, I think of this gentle, rhythmic companion. A little tap, tap, tap inside the chest that feels cozy. But the source material for this fact is suggesting that inside my ribcage right now is essentially a pressure washer waiting to go off.
That is not a terrible analogy. To really grasp the magnitude of this, I want you and you, the listener, to visualize a specific scenario. And again, warning, this is graphic, but it's just physics.
Okay.
Picture a medieval battlefield. Or, if you prefer something a bit cleaner, a modern trauma ward.
Okay, I'm picturing it. Sterile lights, intense focus, or, mud and chainmail. Go on.
Now imagine a moment where a major artery is severed. We're not talking about a scraped knee or a cut on your finger.
No, this is different.
Those are capillaries or veins, low-pressure systems. We are talking about the high-pressure lines, the femoral artery in the thigh, or the carotid in the neck.
Main pipelines, the highway system.
Exactly. Now, movies usually get this completely wrong. In films, you see this slow, dramatic ooze, or a dark stain spreading across a shirt. It's all very moody and slow.
Right, the dramatic trickle for emotional effect. The character has time to deliver a final monologue while a red spot slowly grows.
In reality, with a major arterial breach, there is no time for a monologue. It is not a trickle. It's an eruption.
An eruption.
The source material uses very specific, very evocative language here. It describes pulsatile jets and bright crimson parabolas.
Crimson parabolas. That is hauntingly poetic. It sounds like a geometry lesson gone very, very wrong.
It's a geometry of pressure. Because the heart isn't just pushing fluid along, it is driving it with this explosive force.
Right.
And here is the statistic that really anchors this deep dive, the one that frankly blew my mind when I first read the papers.
Okay.
If you could take that arterial flow, that severed connection, and point it straight up, vertically, without any resistance from skin or muscle.
Oh, I have a feeling I know where this is going, and I'm a little terrified.
That column of blood would shoot nearly 30 feet into the air.
30 feet. I'm trying to visualize that in the real world. That's not just over my head. That is what...
That's a 3-story building.
A 3-story building. So if I'm standing on the sidewalk, looking up at the 3rd floor window of an apartment complex.
Your heart, this fist-sized organ sitting inside your ribcage right now, generates enough force to shoot a liquid projectile to that window.
With every single beat.
With every single beat.
That is absolutely wild. And it completely reframes how I see the human body. It implies that we're walking around with this incredibly pressurized system, just contained. The only thing keeping me from becoming a human fountain is a few millimeters of tissue.
Essentially, yes. We are pressurized vessels. But let's look at the why before we get too stuck on the horror of it all.
Good idea.
Why does the left ventricle, the specific chamber responsible for this, need to generate that kind of force?
Right.
Why do we need 30 feet of vertical projection capability?
That was my next question. It seems like overkill. I'm about 6 feet tall. Why do I need 30 feet of pressure to move blood from my heart to my brain? That's, what, a roughly 12-inch trip against gravity?
It's about the return trip, and it's about the total resistance of the entire system. The source gives us the pressure metric, 120 millimeters of mercury.
Okay.
Or roughly 16 kilopascals. That is the squeeze at the source.
16 kilopascals. For those of us who don't think in physics equations or meteorology, what is that actually doing?
Well, think about the workload. We've mentioned in previous deep dives that the vascular system is roughly 60,000 miles long if you laid it end to end.
Right.
That includes every capillary, every vein, every artery. That is a massive amount of surface area.
60,000 miles. That wraps around the Earth twice.
Exactly. Now imagine trying to push a thick fluid through 60,000 miles of tubing. That creates drag, friction, resistance.
Okay, so it's like trying to push water through a very, very long, very thin garden hose. You need high pressure at the spigot just to get a drop out the other end.
Precisely. But there's an even bigger factor, gravity. Humans are upright. We are vertical structures. Your heart has to push a heavy, viscous fluid. Blood is much thicker than water all the way down to your feet. That part is easy. Gravity helps.
Yeah.
But then it has to drive it all the way back up. And crucially, it has to lift a column of that fluid from your chest up to your brain.
The penthouse of the body.
The penthouse. And the penthouse is greedy. It demands constant high-pressure delivery. It doesn't have a storage tank.
It needs fresh oxygen every second.
Every second. That 30-foot potential energy is what ensures that when you are standing up or running or climbing stairs, your brain still gets its water pressure, so to speak.
So if the pressure were any lower, let's say we only had enough for 10 feet of spray, I assume the faucet on the top floor would run dry.
It would sputter. And you have actually experienced what happens when the system lags even slightly. It's a very common phenomenon. Have you ever been lying on the couch, maybe watching a movie for a few hours, and you stand up really, really quickly to answer the door?
Oh, absolutely. The head rush. The room spins, vision gets a little fuzzy. Maybe you see some sparkles in your peripheral vision. I usually have to grab onto something for a second.
That sensation right there is you experiencing the edge of the envelope.
Wait, really? I just thought I was being clumsy or maybe a bit dehydrated.
No, it's physics. It's called orthostatic hypotension. When you stand up suddenly, gravity instantly pulls the blood down toward your legs. It pools in your lower half.
Okay.
For a split second, that 16 kilopascals of pressure isn't quite enough to overcome that sudden change. The column of blood reaching your brain drops.
So the dizziness is literally my brain running low on fuel.
It's a momentary lack of perfusion, a momentary drop in hydraulic pressure. You are feeling the limits of the system. But what's fascinating is what happens next. You don't faint every time, do you?
No, usually it passes in like 2 or 3 seconds. I shake my head and I'm fine.
That is the system correcting itself. Your body has sensors, they're called baroreceptors, in your neck and chest. They detect that pressure drop immediately. Within seconds, they send a panic signal to the brain.
And what does the brain do?
It triggers vasoconstriction. Your vessels tighten up to squeeze the blood upward, and your heart rate spikes to pump harder and faster.
So that thump, thump, thump I feel in my neck after a head rush is the engine revving up.
Precisely. It's the pump compensating to get that fountain back up to the 3rd floor. It's a brilliant, rapid response system.
Wow.
But that moment of dizziness is a stark reminder of just how hard the heart has to work against gravity every single day. We take it for granted until gravity wins for a split second.
It really puts a new perspective on just standing up. I'm doing a hydraulic workout just by getting out of bed in the morning.
You are. And this brings us to an analogy the source material uses, which I think is fantastic. It helps frame this power in a way that's a bit more mechanical and less bloody.
Okay.
The fire engine.
Yes, the fire engine pump. I saw this in the notes. It feels like a bit of a stretch at first, comparing a biological organ to a massive truck. Break down the stats for me.
Well, let's look at the fire pump first. A standard fire engine pump generates massive pressure. We are talking 150 to 200 psi. In kilopascals, that's roughly 1,000 to 1,400.
Okay, so that is significantly higher than the heart's 16 kilopascals.
Oh, absolutely. But look at the objective. The goal of the fire pump is to shoot a heavy stream of water vertically, about 30 to 60 feet, to reach the upper floors of a burning building.
Okay, I see the parallel. The fire truck shoots water up 30 to 60 feet. The heart, our little crimson fountain, can shoot blood up 30 feet.
The parallel is in the engineering task. It is maintaining fluid delivery throughout a vertical structure against resistance. The heart is basically a biological fire pump.
Just, scale down to fit in your chest.
Right. But the fire truck is made of steel and iron and heavy-duty rubber. I'm made of, well, meat.
Exactly. And that's where the comparison gets really interesting. Think about the operational life of a fire engine. How often is that pump actually running at full blast?
I mean, hopefully not that often. Only when there's a fire. The rest of the time it sits in the station house.
Exactly. It operates intermittently and crucially when it breaks. You turn it off, you take it to the shop, you replace the gaskets, change the oil, you can shut it down for maintenance.
Right. You can't exactly pull over to the side of the road and turn off your heart for an oil change.
No, that would be bad.
That is the critical distinction. The heart has to perform this fire hose level of work continuously, every minute of every hour of every decade. It is a pump that can never be turned off for repairs.
If it stops for maintenance, you die.
That is mind-boggling when you think about mechanical wear and tear. If I ran my car engine at 60 miles per hour, non-stop, 247, it would blow a gasket in a week.
More or less.
It would. Metal fatigues, rubber cracks. But the heart repairs itself while it is running. It replaces its own proteins, repairs its own cells, all without missing a single beat.
It rebuilds itself mid-cycle.
It does. And what about the hoses? The fire hose is just canvas and rubber. It's passive. The source calls our vessels adaptive plumbing. A copper pipe in your house is rigid. If the pressure spikes, it bursts. But your arteries, they are sophisticated organs in their own right.
How are they sophisticated? I just picture them as tubes.
Well, for one, they are elastic. This is key. When the heart pumps, that 30-foot surge, the arteries actually stretch to absorb the shock.
Okay.
They balloon out slightly. It's called the Windkessel effect. It turns that explosive burst into a smooth flow. If they were rigid pipes, the pressure would drop to 0 between beats.
So they act like shock absorbers.
Shock absorbers and regulators. They are muscular. They can squeeze to raise pressure or relax to lower it. It is adaptive plumbing that would make any civil engineer envious.
It's a dynamic system that changes its own diameter based on what the pump is doing.
Instantly. It directs flow where it's needed. It's smart piping. If you are digesting a meal, blood goes to the stomach. If you are running from a tiger, the stomach vessels clamp shut and the leg vessels open wide.
It's a constantly shifting hydraulic map.
It is. So we have this incredible pressure, this self-repairing pump, this smart plumbing. It sounds like a perfect system. But the source material pivots here to something a bit darker. It calls it the big question.
Right.
Yes. This is where we move from mechanics to, I guess, philosophy, or maybe existentialism. The source posits that this hydraulic power highlights the fragility of existence.
Fragility is an interesting word when we've just been talking about how powerful the system is.
But the power is the danger. We touched on it at the beginning, the fountain. The reality is, because we are pressurized vessels, we are constantly one injury away from what the medical texts call rapid exsanguination.
Which is a very polite way of saying bleeding out very, very fast.
Correct. If we were low-pressure creatures, like, say, a slug or a clamacut, wouldn't be a catastrophe. It would just ooze a bit.
Sure.
You could slap a bandage on it an hour later. But because we run at this high-performance pressure, 120 mmHg breach is life-threatening within minutes.
And it mentions this isn't new knowledge.
Not at all. Medieval physicians knew this intimately. Samurai knew this. Modern trauma surgeons live by this reality. There is a concept called the golden hour in trauma medicine, but with an arterial bleed, you don't have an hour, you have minutes. Survival depends entirely on keeping that system sealed. If the seal breaks on a major line, the pump itself, that beautiful, powerful engine, becomes the enemy.
Because it just keeps doing its job.
Exactly. It doesn't know the pipe is cut. It just keeps pumping that 30-foot column of fluid out onto the floor. It pumps your life out.
It's a sobering thought. We are high-performance machines, but that high performance comes with a high risk.
Right.
It feels like a trade-off.
It is a trade-off, an evolutionary trade-off, the Goldilocks calibration.
Exactly. Why is our blood pressure what it is? Why 120/80? Why not higher? Why not lower?
Well, let's play devil's advocate here. This is where we get into the engineering the pressure section of the deep dive.
Okay.
The source poses these hypotheticals about future human engineering. Suppose we could genetically tweak humans to have a baseline pressure of, say, 200 or 250.
Super pressurized humans. What's the benefit?
Theoretically, better oxygen delivery. You could potentially think faster, run longer, never get dizzy when standing up. You'd be a high-performance athlete just sitting in a chair.
Sign me up. What's the catch?
The catch is the plumbing. You'd be blowing a gasket constantly. The risk of stroke, which is just a vessel bursting in the brain, would skyrocket.
A stroke is basically a pipe bursting under pressure.
Exactly. And your kidneys, they act as filters for your blood.
Eh?
If you blast high-pressure fluid through a delicate filter, you tear the filter apart.
So your kidneys would be shredded.
They would. You'd burn hot and bright, but you wouldn't last long. You might be an Olympic sprinter at age 12 and dead of kidney failure by 18.
Okay, so high pressure is a fast track to a short life?
Yeah.
What about the other direction? Lower pressure. Could we engineer people to run at a chill 80/50?
You might eliminate heart disease. You'd put way less stress on the vessel walls, less wear and tear. You might live to be 150 because your engine is just idling, but you'd be sluggish. You probably couldn't run a marathon. You might pass out every time you stood up too fast. You would lack the hydraulic power to be an active, dynamic apex predator.
You'd be more like a sloth.
Pretty much. So we really are stuck in this Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, just enough pressure to run a marathon, but not so much that we blow our brains out.
Evolution has spent millions of years calibrating this limit.
Exactly. But you know, humans, we can't leave well enough alone. The source mentions variable pressure systems as a potential future tech.
This is the sci-fi angle.
It is. Imagine a bioengineered heart or an implant that could modulate pressure dynamically.
Like a sport mode in a car.
Exactly. Imagine you're sitting at a desk and your heart drops into eco mode. Super low pressure, saving the pipes, extending our lifespan.
Okay.
Then you see a bus you need to catch, you toggle sport mode, the pressure spikes to 200 mil in HD for peak performance, and then drops back down the second you're safe.
That sounds ideal. That sounds like the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
Why hasn't nature done that?
On paper, yeah. But the expert commentary in the source warns about new failure modes. Complex systems tend to break in complex ways.
What kind of failure modes are we talking about?
Well, what if the regulator gets stuck? What if it gets stuck in sport mode while you're sleeping? You'd wake up with a stroke.
Or what if it gets stuck in eco mode when a bear is chasing you?
Exactly. You'd try to run and immediately faint. Or consider the transition. Switching from low to high pressure instantly creates a shockwave.
A hydraulic hammer.
That could rupture vessels all on its own.
Right. Or what if you get hacked? That's a whole other deep dive. Ransomware for your heart valve.
Let's not give anyone ideas. But it brings us back to the conclusion of this fact. The 30-foot fountain isn't just a gross visualization, it represents a limit. A safety limit calibrated by nature.
It's like the red line on a tachometer.
It is. And the takeaway here is that tampering with that line, even if our intentions are to extend life or make us Superman, requires extreme caution. We are powerful, yes, but that power is contained by a very thin, very fragile boundary. If we try to create systems more powerful than our biology can handle, we might just create machines that are strong enough to destroy themselves.
That is a heavy thought to end on. We are walking around with a 30-foot geyser inside us, kept in check by millions of years of fine-tuning. It makes me want to sit very still and appreciate my blood pressure exactly where it is.
Just don't stand up too fast.
I will take that advice to heart. Literally.
It really connects back to that idea of the fire engine. We appreciate the fire engine because it's loud and visible and bright red. We rarely appreciate the engine inside us until something goes wrong.
Or until we learn that it can shoot fluid to the 3rd floor. I don't think I'll ever look at a 3-story building the same way again. I'll just think, yep, that's my range.
A strange superpower, to be sure, but one that keeps you alive.
Indeed. Well, that was a wild ride through the hydraulics of the human chest. From medieval battlefields to fire trucks to the future of bioengineering. It's clear that fact number 2 is a heavyweight in this countdown.
It certainly sets a high bar for pressure.
I see what you did there.
I couldn't resist.
That covers 2.
Ready for the next one? Let's head to fact 1.
We have finally reached it. The most magnificent revelation on our list. Fact number 1.
It really feels like we've been on a huge journey to get to this point. We've, counted down from 10, looked at the body from pretty much every angle, but today, today is different.
It really is. We're closing out this extraordinary journey by going right into the engine room. We're talking about the heart. And look, I'll be totally honest with you. When I first saw the source material for this, I had this moment of, okay, the heart, I get it. It's a pump. Goes thud, thud. Learned that in high school biology.
That is the single most common reaction I hear. And it is also, I think, the most dangerous misconception we're here to dismantle today. If you only see the heart as this simple mechanical pump, you are missing, truly missing, the most complex and autonomous and, frankly, intelligent machine that nature has ever built.
Intelligent. See, that's a word that throws me a little. I get vital, I get strong, but intelligent.
That is exactly what we are going to unpack. Our mission today is to kind of sprint through the big engineering marvels facts 10 down to 2, just to show you that this isn't just a pump, it's a processor. And that journey is what leads us to the ultimate truth, to fact number 1.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it. Let's not waste a single beat. Let's start with fact number 10, the size of 2 fists.
It's a classic place to start, but the actual physics behind why it's that size are much stranger than people think.
Okay, so let's get the visual first. I want you, our listener, to actually do this with me right now, unless you're driving, of course. Just clasp your hands together, interlace your fingers, cross your thumbs over. Now press your palms tight at the space in your hands. That's your heart.
And try to imagine it's not just air in there. Imagine you're holding something like a water balloon, but it's filled with a warm gel.
But it's armored, right? It's not some fragile little thing.
No, absolutely not fragile. It's armored with these spiraling muscle fibers. It's dense. It's resilient almost, rubbery.
And it weighs, what, about 300 grams?
Roughly, yeah.
Okay, so here's my first big question. If this thing is so critical, the absolute engine of life, why is it so small? Why isn't it the size of, I don't know, a basketball? In the car world, right, bigger engine, more power, why wouldn't evolution just build a huge heart to be on the safe side?
It's a great question, and the answer is actually in a piece of physics called the Laplace relationship.
Laplace, okay, you got to break that down for us. No jargon.
Right, so just think of a balloon. When you blow up a balloon until it's huge, the rubber is stretched incredibly tight, right? The tension on the wall is just massive.
Yeah, it feels like it's about to pop.
Exactly. Now, if you have a small balloon, one that isn't inflated much, the wall is still loose, it's easy to squeeze. So the law of Laplace basically says that the larger the radius of a vessel, the more tension you need in the wall just to create the same amount of internal pressure.
So if I had a giant heart,
If your heart were double the size, the muscle would have to work exponentially harder. I mean, generating enormous amounts of tension just to squeeze the blood out at the same pressure. It would be incredibly inefficient.
that would just burn itself out.
Almost immediately.
Yeah.
It would just consume way too much oxygen and it would accelerate right toward failure. Evolution has tuned the heart to be in this perfect Goldilocks zone. It's just large enough to pump 5 liters a minute, but it's small enough that the wall tension is manageable for, a billion beats.
A billion beats. I mean, that number just rolls off the tongue, but it's so hard to actually wrap your head around.
It really is.
Which is a perfect segue to fact number 9, the lifetime pumping record.
Yeah.
Because if we're talking a billion beats, we have to talk about the liquid. And the amount of liquid this little two-fisted engine moves is. Well, the sources use some pretty wild analogies to even make it make sense.
It's staggering. It really is.
Okay, so picture an oil supertanker. One of those massive ships that haul crude oil across the ocean. The kind where if you walk from the front to the back, it literally takes you 15 minutes.
These huge steel leviathans.
Right. Now imagine filling that entire ship with blood. And then imagine filling up multiple supertankers. Over a lifetime, your heart pumps a volume that's equivalent to about 1 million barrels.
To put that in another engineering context, you could compare it to, say, the Hoover Dam.
But the dam is concrete and steel.
True, but think about the flow. The dam processes a river. Your heart processes your body's entire blood volume. Every single drop, roughly once every minute.
Wait, hold on. Every single minute.
Every minute. The whole 5 to 6 liters of blood in your body goes through the heart to the lungs, back to the heart, and then out to the body. It circulates the entire inventory constantly.
That seems excessive. Why so fast?
Because your cells are just so needy, they can't store oxygen. If that delivery truck stops coming for even a few minutes, the cells start to die.
But here's the part I can't reconcile. The Hoover Dam has a maintenance crew. It has engineers checking for cracks. It has downtime. The heart is made of, well, it's meat. It's soft tissue. How does it handle that kind of pressure without just shredding itself after a year?
And that is the miracle of biological engineering. The heart does all of this autonomously. It self-repairs on the fly, and it only consumes the energy it gets from your lunch. It's like rebuilding its own engines while the car is still driving down the highway at 60 miles an hour.
It really makes you think about the warranty on this thing.
It does, and that's a really deep insight the research pointed to. We operate on what you could call a finite mechanical budget. Every single heartbeat is a tiny withdrawal from this vast but ultimately limited account.
That is a terrifying way to look at life.
Well, it raises a really interesting philosophical question about life extension. If we replace the heart with a machine that doesn't wear out, say, a maglev pump, have we actually solved mortality, or have we just postponed a different kind of failure? Because right now, the heart is so often the limiting factor.
That is a heavy thought to carry into fact number 8, the 100,000 beat day. Because that account you just mentioned, we're withdrawing from it 100,000 times.
Right.
Every single day.
And each one of those withdrawals is a pretty violent event.
Violent. See, I think of a heartbeat as a thump. It sounds kind of cozy, rhythmic.
That sound is so deceiving. It's not a gentle squeeze. It's a miniature explosion. You have electrical signals racing through the tissue at 4 meters per second. The valves, which are really just flaps of tissue, are slamming shut with enough force that you can actually hear it through your chest wall.
It's like slamming a door 100,000 times a day and expecting the hinges not to break.
Exactly. Or think of it like a Swiss watch. But a Swiss watch that never ever stops, that winds itself, and this is the real kicker, it operates in a warm, corrosive chemical environment.
You mean our blood?
Yes. The inside of your body is a chemically active soup. Metal rusts, plastic degrades, the heart just keeps going.
And it's not just marking time, is it?
No, this is something I absolutely love. The heart doesn't just mark time. It generates biological time. It's setting the tempo for your entire metabolism. When your heart races, your subjective experience of time actually changes. When it slows, you cool down.
So in a way, I am just a passenger on this rhythm.
In so many ways, yes. It sort of implies that your identity is just a pattern that's persisting through this constant flux. Between every beat, there's a millisecond of silence where no blood is moving. In that silence. Are you the same person you were a beat ago?
Okay, stop. That is way too deep for segment one. Let's zoom out a bit. Or actually, let's zoom in. We've looked at the engine, now let's look at the roads. Fact number 7, the 60,000-mile highway.
The infrastructure. This is where the scale just goes from impressive to completely impossible.
I love this visualization. So imagine you shrink down, magic school bus style. You shrink down to the size of a single red blood cell.
Okay, I'm tiny. I'm sitting in the left ventricle.
You get shot out through the aorta, which is like a water slide, by the way. It's about as wide as a garden hose. But then you rush down into this incredible branching network.
And it just keeps branching recursively, like a tree.
Exactly. It goes from the massive aorta down to arteries, then arterioles, and then finally to these capillaries that are so thin, you have to literally squeeze through them single file.
You actually have to deform your own shape just to fit.
And the sources say if you laid all of those vessels end to end.
You could circle the Earth twice.
Twice. Inside one body. How is that even possible?
It's just the beauty of fractals. It follows a principle called Poiseuille's law for the flow, but visually, just think of a giant oak tree. The root system of a massive oak tree has miles and miles of length, but it's all packed into this tight ball of soil. The body has to maximize surface area to get oxygen to every single cell, so it creates this unbelievably dense 60,000-mile web.
But here's the scary part the sources brought up. When this highway starts to fail, when those little roads get blocked, it's not just about, having a heart attack. It actually changes who you are.
This is so critical. The brain is the most energy-hungry organ we have. It relies entirely on that highway. So if the vascular system starts to degrade from, say, high blood pressure or plaque, the brain just gets less oxygen.
And we're talking about things like vascular dementia.
Yes, but even before you get to that stage, subtle changes, memories might fade a little faster, your patience wears thin, your personality can shift. It really forces you to ask, are you still you when the infrastructure that sustains your personality starts to crumble?
That connects so perfectly to fact number 6, which might be the most sci-fi idea on this whole list, the independent engine.
This is where we really start to challenge the definition of life itself.
Okay, so picture this, because I find this genuinely unsettling. A patient is declared brain dead. The lights are out upstairs, the EEG is flat. But the heart is still beating. Or even wilder, a surgeon takes a heart out of a body for a transplant. They put it in a sterile basin with some nutrient fluid. And it just keeps beating, all by itself. No brain attached.
It's what some call the clockwork island analogy. The heart is like an autonomous region inside the nation of the body. It has its own system of governance.
How? I thought the brain controlled everything.
Not the heartbeat, no. The SA node, the sinoatrial node, is the heart's own natural pacemaker. It's basically executing a genetic program completely independent of the brain. It just says beat, 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 no matter what the brain is doing. The brain can send signals to speed it up or slow it down, kind of like a coach yelling from the sidelines, but the brain isn't actually playing the game.
Which raises this huge question about death. If a heart is beating in a box, is it alive?
Biologically, yes. It's living tissue doing its job. But is the person there?
That's the question.
It separates the organism from the self in this really unsettling way. It forces us to realize that life isn't a single on-off switch. It's a collection of systems. And the engine can keep running long after the driver has left the vehicle.
Okay, let's move to fact number 5. We've talked about the pump, the pipes, the independence. Now let's talk about the spark. The 2600 flash lightning storm.
The electrical grid.
So the source says that over a lifetime, the heart generates more electrical events than there are stars in the Milky Way. I mean, it just sounds like hyperbole.
It's not, it's just math. 2.5 billion beats, and each beat involves billions of cells firing.
But it's not just the sheer number of sparks, right? It's the coordination.
Exactly. This is the hardest engineering problem of all. Imagine a stadium with 100,000 people. And you want every single person to clap at the exact same millisecond. Not a wave, but one single simultaneous clap.
Impossible.
Right. Now imagine 3 billion cells. They all have to contract at once to create a powerful squeeze. If they just fire randomly, the heart just quivers. That's called fibrillation, and it kills you.
So how do they all stay in sync?
The internet analogy works best here. It's a distributed network. There's no central processor telling every single cell, fire now. Instead, each cell is connected to its neighbor. When one fires, it passes that signal instantly to the next one.
Like a peer-to-peer network.
Precisely. It's a wave of depolarization, a change in voltage that just ripples across the entire heart. It's a lightning storm that has to strike in exactly the same path 100,000 times a day without a single error.
And if that timing is off by just a few milliseconds,
A whole system crashes. Cardiac arrest.
that is both terrifying and beautiful. Okay, we are entering the top tier now. Segment 3, hidden powers. This is where things get really surprising for me. Fact number 4, the little brain in the heart.
This is the one that usually catches people completely off guard.
Yeah, we think of the brain as the only place with neurons. But the heart has its own neural network.
About 40,000 neurons, yeah, clustered right there on the epicardial surface.
Nick, is it doing crossword puzzles down there?
Not quite like that. The best analogy is a modern aircraft's fly-by-wire system. The pilot, it's your brain, sets the destination, go there. But the plane's own computers are handling all the micro-adjustments, the wind shear, the fuel flow, the stability.
So the brain doesn't have to micromanage every single valve and contraction.
Exactly. The heart's little brain processes information locally. It senses pressure changes, hormones, different chemical signals, and it adjusts the heart's function instantly before the brain upstairs even knows what's happened.
Is this related to what people talk about with HRV or heart rate variability?
Yes, this is the practical takeaway. A truly healthy heart isn't a perfect metronome. It varies slightly between beats because that little brain is constantly adapting to the environment. When you take a deep breath to calm yourself down, you are essentially hacking this system.
I'm manually overriding the autopilot.
In a way, yes, you're sending a direct signal to that local network to just chill out.
Which brings us to fact number 3. The sheer raw power of this thing. The power to reach the moon.
The math on this is just incredibly fun.
Okay, visualize a beam of light connecting your chest all the way to the moon. That's 384,400 kilometers away.
That's a long walk.
If you take all the energy the heart produces, all the work it does squeezing fluid, and you just add it all up over a lifetime.
If you integrate the pressure volume work of 2.5 billion beats, it equals the amount of energy required to physically propel a significant object all the way to the moon.
That is insane. It's a muscle the size of a fist. How can it produce rocket-level energy?
It's just the power consistency. A space shuttle burns a massive amount of fuel in one short burst to get to orbit. The heart is the tortoise. It converts about 20 to 25% of its chemical energy into work, which is actually very efficient for a biological engine, and it just does it continuously. It's like the compound interest of energy.
And it runs on nothing but glucose and oxygen.
Just your lunch and the air you breathe.
It's not just efficient, though. It's powerful in a really scary way. Fact number 2, the 30-foot fountain.
This is the raw hydraulic power.
If you sever a major artery, and please, listeners, do not try this at home, the pressure inside is high enough to spray blood 30 feet into the air.
That's 3 stories high.
Why? Why do we need that much pressure? It just seems dangerous.
Gravity. Think about a fire engine having to pump water up to the top of a burning building. Your brain is sitting above your heart. So every second of every day, the heart has to fight gravity to push fluid up into your head. If that pressure drops, you pass out.
So we are basically just pressurized vessels.
We are. We exist on this thin, very dangerous boundary. We need that high pressure to stay conscious and keep the highway open, but if the pressure gets too high, we can blow a gasket, a stroke, or an aneurysm.
It's a high-wire act that never, ever ends.
And it creates this very specific vulnerability. We are soft machines that are running at very high pressure.
Okay, we have unpacked the engineering, the electricity, the hidden brain, and the raw power. We've seen the mechanics, but now we have to talk about what it all means.
The transition from machine to meaning.
We have finally reached it. The most magnificent revelation on our list. Fact number 1.
The master communicator.
This is the one that changes everything for me. I really want to slow down here.
Let's do it.
I want you to just feel your heartbeat right now. Maybe put a hand on your chest. Maybe it's calm. Or maybe it's a little elevated because we just talked about arteries spraying blood 30 feet. We usually think of this relationship as a one-way street. We think, I'm nervous, my brain realizes I'm nervous, so my brain tells my heart to beat faster. The brain is the general, and the heart is the soldier.
But the anatomy, the actual wiring, tells a completely different story.
Here it is, the revelation. The heart sends 10 times as much information to the brain as the brain sends to the heart.
Just let that sink in for a second. The traffic on the vagus nerve, which is the main data cable connecting them, is 80 to 90% upstream, from the heart to the brain.
So, what is it saying? What is the heart telling the brain all the time?
It's like an intelligence agency reporting back to a government. The brain thinks it's the dictator, the central authority. But in reality, it spends most of its time just reacting to the intelligence reports it's getting from the heart.
And these reports aren't just like technical data. They're not just blood pressure is stable.
No, this is the wild part. These signals travel directly to the amygdala, that's your fear center. They go to the insula, where you process physical sensation. And they go to the prefrontal cortex, where you make your decisions.
So if my heart is beating in a chaotic rhythm versus a coherent one,
It changes how your brain processes reality. If the heart sends a chaotic, messy signal, the amygdala activates. You feel anxious. You might perceive a neutral face as a threat. The heart is literally shaping your perception of fear, or love, or safety.
so when I say I have a gut feeling or a heartfelt emotion, those aren't just poetic metaphors.
No, they're physiological realities. We used to think emotions started in the brain and just trickled down. Now we know it's often a loop. The body's state, the heart's state, informs the brain about how it should feel.
This just completely upends the idea that I am a brain in a jar.
Exactly. The self is not isolated up in the skull. It is a duet, a constant duet between the pump and the processor. We are embodied. You cannot separate your thoughts from the rhythm that sustains those thoughts. If you change the rhythm of the heart, you change the mind.
That is the ultimate big question, isn't it?
It is. The mystery is that simple, matter-dead atoms organized into these two organs, the heart and the brain, can sustain this window of awareness. A window where the universe can actually look back and marvel at itself, and all of it rides on that rhythm. That beat is the metronome of your consciousness.
Wow. From the size of two fists
Yeah.
to the master communicator that's shaping our very reality, what a way to finish this list.
It really forces you to respect that engine inside your chest. It's not just keeping you alive, it's helping you be you.
I don't think I can ever think of it as just a pump ever again.
That was the goal.
Thank you so much for taking this journey with us. We've gone from the extremities all the way to the core, and I really hope you'll never look at your own heartbeat the same way again.
Indeed. It's been a privilege.
To all our listeners who have stuck with us through this countdown, thank you. We hope this has shifted your perspective. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe for our next series. We're just getting started.
Always more to explore.
Thanks for listening to the Extraordinary 10 podcast.